Just imagine a world where we are not able to speak, to express our feelings and emotions. How does the last 30 seconds make you feel? Please share with us in the chat. I sing some words: lonely, disconnected, unaware, voiceless, excited, confused, frustrated, sad. Again, confused, quiet, unseen, unheard. Good morning. Buenos dias. Welcome to the Embracing Our Changing Community, the Power of Words. Embracing Our Changing Community is the annual conference of the Intercultural Advocacy Institute and the Hispanic Leadership Council. This year, our conference is the Power of Words. Have you ever thought about the power of words, your words? Words have the power to build or to tear down, to motivate someone to achieve great things, or just to shut down. Words can unite or they can divide us. Have you ever been impacted by a word, either positively or negatively, to the point that it changed your path? The power of word is geared to help you better understand how your word affect people and how words affect you. The way you use words can include or exclude others. Words can build and engage an empowered community. Our goal is to highlight the power that words have on us and how this in turn impacts the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Words have the power to bridge countries, states, and cities, but it's up to us to try and understand each other out of respect and curiosity. My name is Yaridis Garcia, Community Engagement Manager at the Juvenile Welfare Board. Each year, the Embracing Our Changing Community Conference brings together a variety of presenters, service providers, professionals, educators, community organizers, students, and much more to learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion. During the past years, 15 years, this conference has addressed many diversity-related topics, including race, ethnicity, socioeconomic divides, gender, culture, sexuality, abilities and disabilities, religion, and much more. Before we get started into this program, I would like to introduce Maria Pepe, Community Partnership Specialist, and Amanda Markowitz, Executive Director of the Intercultural Advocacy Institute, to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge our sponsors who help today's events possible and not cost to you. Welcome, Maria and Amanda.
Thank you, Yaridis, and good morning, everyone. As Yaridis mentioned, I am Maria Pepe, Community Partnership Specialist for the Empath Health and also Chairwoman for the Hispanic Leadership Council. And you know what, Yaridis and Amanda, this morning when I was coming here to Empath Health, I was remembering about 2009, July 2009, I attended Embracing Our Changing Community Conference for the first time. It was hosted here at the Clearwater Service Center of Empath Health, and of course, organized by the Hispanic Leadership Council. Little did I know that 6 years later, I will be working here at Empath Health for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, and I will be part of the planning team for this amazing conference, which is a subcommittee of the Hispanic Leadership Council. I remember that conference as it was yesterday because the speakers inspired me to go deeper into conversations about DEI. But I also left wondering, what does it take? What does it take to plan and deliver such a successful conference year after year? Well, I think that after a few years, I have gained a little bit of an insight about that. So today, I want to thank all of you for being here, all of our attendees. I want to thank all our speakers, but especially I want to thank our planning committee. We meet consistently throughout the year, and not only we bring our expertise and resources, but let me tell you what we bring. We bring our full humanity. And it's through that lens, when we talk about joy, tribulation, all the barriers, but also how we have overcome barriers. And we also bring up our privilege is that we put together these amazing topics. So to this committee, I want to say thank you. And with that, I would like to welcome the newest member of the planning committee for the Embracing Our Changing Community Conference and the new CEO for the Hispanic Outreach Center, Amanda Markowitz. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Like Maria said, my name is Amanda Markowitz. I'm the CEO of the Intercultural Advocacy Institute, the Hispanic Outreach Center. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be at the conference this morning and to being here with us today. I also, like Maria mentioned, want to thank the committee for the time and energy and effort they put into making today happen. Lots of dedication and commitment made today possible. The Hispanic Outreach Center is committed to the development of strong families, community engagement, social and economic integration, and the education of our diverse community. Our vision is to create a unified, peaceful, and engaged community where all individuals may contribute their talents free of discrimination based on language, race, cultural, or ethnicity. To find out more about the center or to support the work that's being done within our communities, I encourage you to visit the website, which is the HispanicOutreachCenter.org. And again, thank you for being here with us today, and I hope everyone enjoys the conference.
Thank you so much, Maria and Amanda, for your commitment, advocacy, dedication, and for empowering our Latino community. We have a great agenda for you this morning, including a first-hand experience with a magnificent keynote address, a brave panel discussion, and a powerhouse closing session speaker. Like Maria mentioned, all of this is possible thanks to the coordination and hard work for almost a year from the members of the Diversity Committee with whom I have the pleasure to work with. If you want to be part of this small but mighty committee, please write your information in the chat and one of us will reach out to you. Maria will also write in the chat the email where you can send us a message and join us to be part of this next year's journey. I encourage you throughout the morning to use the chat box to share your thoughts, highlight any powerful messages or phrases you hear from our speakers that resonate with you and why the message speaks to you, your organization, and the work that you do in the community. For questions that you would like to direct directly to the speakers, please use the Q&A box, and a handful will be selected this morning due to our limited time. Other responses will be sent in a follow-up email after the conference. This is a reminder that the session this morning is being recorded. Also, closed caption is available for all participants throughout the conference. We will post this recording at the Hispanic Outreach Center's webpage. Those in attendance will receive a notification when the video is posted. This year, listen, this year, everyone in attendance will receive a great prize. But in addition to this, one person will have the opportunity to win another great prize. So you better stay in the conference and be very active in the chat if you want to be the winner of this prize. How many words does it take to ruin your day? For our keynote speaker, it only two words, spoken by someone she loves very much on a very special occasion. Like so many of us in similar situations, she had a choice. Let it become her story or rewrite the story. And luckily for us, she has done the hard work so she can share those lessons with us about the stories we make up, the power they can have over us, and what we can do about it. At this time, I have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker, Liz Wooten-Reschke. Liz worked with many people who want to be better leaders through courage, authenticity, and resiliency. Her own words, she is a recovering perfectionist whose purpose is affirming worth in others and herself. She began her 15 years of consulting this summer. She has been in service to the nonprofit and education sectors for the last 35 years. She is the mother of 4 humans, ages 9 to 21, 4 animals, ages 1 to 10, and a wife to a nonprofit CEO from Miami. She is a former caregiver, public school teacher, dance team coach, and nonprofit board member. Liz is a 4th-generation Floridian and Key West conch. She's a baseball mom and a dance mom. She earned an undergraduate degree at the University of South Florida, where she later earned her graduate degree with honors. But in addition to that, she's also a yogi, author, and a speaker. Bienvenida, Liz.
Bienvenidas, Yari. Thank you so much for welcoming me. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to get to see so many familiar faces and names on our opportunity today as we move in. Hope you'll forgive the recovering perfectionist. I realized I was on the very last slide of my presentation, so I needed to do some footwork behind the scenes, but we are ready and raring to go. So yes, namaste to my fellow yogis out there. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I can tell you from experience that this work is hard, but it is meaningful. So I hope you'll stay with me as we continue on with the work and move through that as well. So as we move forward, I just want to share a small story. And before we start, PJ, I'll ask just make sure to share, to pin me, just so when my minimized piece, they can see my face as well. So thank you for that. You know, when I was a little girl, my mom used to correct my sentences mid-speech. She couldn't help it. She was an English teacher for 30 years. And so what she taught me from a very early age was exactly, as we've already heard from our guests and our speakers, the idea that words matter, that they impact us, and that they have the power to influence in ways that can be positive or negative. So imagine my own surprise when almost 40 years later, someone that I loved very much imparted the same lesson upon me. Picture this. It's the Friday before Mother's Day. Actually, just this year, only a few short months ago. My son is 11. He is on the verge of becoming a middle schooler, and he's about to ruin my day. As Yaya said, how many words do you think it takes to ruin a day? For me, it took 2. 2 little words said to me by my firstborn on Mother's Day weekend in my own home. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are parents or grandparents or caregivers, but this is not one of those seminal moments I'd like to remember. In fact, it's not even a moment I'd like to repeat, although fellow parents have told me the likelihood is that it will happen again. But as I thought about it more and more, I realized what bothered me most about the moment. And I think I figured it out. In 2 words, my child said to me what I often say to myself. See, I would love to tell you that as a professional speaker, as a parent, as a business owner, as a so-called expert in some spaces, that I don't speak to myself this way. But the truth is that my inner critic is a really, really mean person. She is the queen of questioning my worthiness and throwing me under the bus of shame. Now, my son's 11. He's soon to be 12. He may never even remember the very first time he said those words to me, but I will, because they hurt. So I had a choice in front of me. Do I believe what he said? Do I connect with him about it? Or do I avoid talking to him altogether? So today, not only am I going to share what I did, but more importantly, perhaps, I'm going to share what I learned from that experience about myself and about the stories we tell ourselves. So I'm going to invite you on this journey with me. And as Maria said, I want to invite you as well to bring your full humanity to this practice, because we're going to spend some collective time and energy this morning in a somewhat uncomfortable space. We're going to spend some time working on the narratives that we've been told and talking about how to rewrite them so that they better serve us. One of the very first ways that we do that is to establish some common definitions. We're going to go through some activities together as a group to share that information and talk about how even common words are often different depending on who you're talking to. The second component is going to be to listen to the stories that we've been told by others, because oftentimes those stories we get told by others resound in our head and wear grooves into our cognitive functioning. And the third piece of our practice today is we're going to address the story that we tell ourselves so that we can take the opportunity to change them and make those stories that no longer serve us into some that will. So before we get started, I'm going to invite you to participate in one other way this morning. If you've ever used Menti before, you're welcome to scan this QR code and log on. And if you've not, well, then I'd like to introduce you to a new set of technology for webinar engagement. So all you have to do is go ahead and either use your phone or mobile device to scan the QR code, or go to menti.com and use this specific code. We're going to have a couple of test your tech questions. And as we go through this, you'll have 3 options to participate. One option is to reflect internally and choose not to share. And please know that although I love interactivity, I recognize that this work is hard and important for your heart. The second one will be to continue to just share your answers in chat. We're going to have our volunteer committee make sure that they share some of those selectively as well. And then the third opportunity is what you see in front of you in Mentimeter. This opportunity for us to go into conversation fully anonymously, to share some of our thoughts and come together as a group collectively to share. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and jump into menti.com if you would like to do that today. And again, please feel free to use the chat as well. So as we test our tech here, I want to give us an opportunity to just kind of play around. So according to research, we have 10 thoughts every second. And I'd like our participants, our committee, our panelists to share what's on your mind right now. So you'll be using Menti to share that, and you'll see these kind of pop up. This is what we call lovingly in the verbal world a word cloud. So if the words get used again, they're going to get bigger and bigger. I'm not surprised to see tired still be such a big one out there. I know many of us are in the nonprofit space or frontline workers or educators. So Friday, I love it. Tired, understood, work. And as you'll see, just a lot of different feedback here on how we're feeling today. So I'll give just a few more seconds for those of you who want to participate. But what I want to give you the opportunity to note here is that even something as simple as what is on your mind today yields hundreds of different results and different words. So as I talk to you about the word and common definitions of words that we hear a lot, I'm going to introduce 3 words. The first word will be courage. The second word will be leadership. And the third word will be integrity. Now, I don't know about you, but with my 20 plus years in the nonprofit sector, I have seen courage, leadership, and integrity used almost ad nauseum. But today we're going to find some common understanding of these so-called common words to demonstrate a point not only about the power, but how we define the words. Because in fact, how we define the words is often how we take in the meaning of them. So using Mentimeter, and I see a lot of you are doing so, I want you to just share very quickly what you define courage as. So simply completing that sentence. Courage is fill in the blank. Okay, I see courage is commitment. It's uncomfortable. It's bravery, strength. Yes, so again, as a word cloud, you're going to see those words that get repeated more than once come into larger font. So I see bravery, I see brave, I see strength, vulnerability, yes. As you all are weighing in, I'll share with you that some of this work started with my own journey in a very vulnerable place. And it started also with combining that work with the work of Dr. Brene Brown. So you're going to hear a little bit of her throughout this as far as some quotes. But one of the quotes that I love to share about courage is from Dr. Susan Cain. She's an educator and a researcher, and she says this: courage is not the lack of fear or uncertainty. Courage is fear walking. So this idea that we take courage and not avoid it, not ignore it, but move through it and acknowledge it as we do so. So looking at the feedback here, I see brave still, I see strength, I see necessary, I see humbling. Yes, some very vulnerable answers here. So thank you for sharing this. And as you heard from your organizers today, you will get some follow-up, but I'm also going to be sharing the overall answers of these slides. So one, you can be able to see your own answer and how this tool works. But number 2, also see that you're not alone in feeling the way that you do. So as we move into our second definition, our kind of commonly used word in our sector of leadership, I'd like to hear what you define leadership as. So you can keep it as simple as you wish. You can use it as an opportunity to quickly grab a dictionary, whatever it is that makes you feel good today. I love this. So leadership is empathy. It's honesty. It's humility. It's caring, right? Do you see that each of these words has the ability to impact us? Some are positive, some are opportunities for growth, but the same can be said of our commonality words as the stories that we tell ourselves. So I see empathy, I love seeing that, caring, honesty, humility, compassion, trustworthiness. Yes, I feel like if we could just take a snapshot and clone this leader in our nonprofit community over and over and over again, we all would be better for it. The last term that I want to ask you to dissect, if you will, is that of integrity. I do a lot of work with organizations about values and vision. And I would say 80% of the time, integrity is a value that resonates with folks. But this time, I want you to really think about what a person with integrity does. So not just defining the word, but what do they do, right? Because I can say I have integrity, but unless my actions and words back that up, can I truthfully say that I have integrity? So we've got some great components here of sharing what a person with integrity does. So a person with integrity does the right thing. I love that. Person with integrity serves as an example, stands up for themselves. Yes. Okay. So does what is right. So some of you I know are Brene Brown fans on the line. And as you know, integrity is defined by Brene as what you do when no one's looking. Okay. Doing what is right over what is fast, fun, or easy. So I think of different times that I have been out of integrity because I haven't wanted to do the hard thing. And so as we get into this conversation about the stories that we've been told and the stories that we are telling ourselves, know that integrity, leadership, and courage not only are defined separately as an individual, but also collectively as culture and society. So before we move into some more interactivity, I'm going to ask you to own a bit of your full humanity here. I want you to acknowledge that people have said some things to you, whether it's recent or in the past, that have hurt you. And I'd like you to take a moment to close your eyes and think about what that person or persons have said. If it provides you comfort, you're more than welcome to put your hand on your heart. You're also welcome to give yourself a hug. No one can see anybody else but myself. So know if you feel a moment that you're feeling those words, just sit in the discomfort of this moment and breathe through it with me. We won't be here much longer. Now, if you did close your eyes, please go ahead and open those. I want you to think without answering what those stories are in our head. For me, as I said, things like, I suck, I need to be perfect, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. Those are some of the soundtracks that come through my head. Those are some of those broken soundtracks that I have to constantly give vigil to. But the truth is that who says words is almost as important as what those words are. Case in point, would it have mattered as much to me if a stranger said those two words to me as opposed to my son? Probably not. Would it have mattered if someone that I worked with said that? Absolutely. Might have taken it in a different context than my 11-year-old, but it's an opportunity for us to think about context. So I'm going to ask you to share at your comfort level, either in the chat or in Menti, and we will ask our volunteers again, if there are any stories that are shared in chat, to just pick 2 or 3. So what are those negative reels, those negative soundtracks that are playing in our head? Use the opportunity here to just put that in chat if you feel so inclined. And Maria and Trudy, if you have any that are coming in from some brave souls, I'd love to hear from them. So another opportunity here is if you didn't feel comfortable putting it in chat, which is perfectly fine, I want you to take this opportunity to use Menti and share what are the stories that we're hearing. Now, for anyone who has experienced emotional hardship lately or trauma, this is that disclaimer of maybe look away. These things are not going to be easy to hear. They're not going to be easy to read. Things like you're a failure. It's not your place. That you're lazy. That you're not included. It's your fault. Whew. 3 words that can wreck a day. I am never enough.
Have a thicker skin.
In the chat, there's some comments about not meeting expectations, not having enough knowledge, not your best isn't good enough.
I'm putting some of those.
Yeah. Not qualified enough. You're not worth it. As I scroll down, these are hard to read. They're hard to feel. So I want to take a moment to say thank you. Because believe it or not, by acknowledging these stories, even if they're not true, we are getting the opportunity to help make meaning of it and own our story along the way. We're all storytellers, in fact. And so if these are the only things that are getting said to us without any context or with limited context or with one-sided context, the story we then tell ourselves is made up from the information that we have at hand. So I want you to take a moment to just reflect on what these stories tell us about ourselves. And I'd like you to think of that kind of Rumi quote or Socrates quote of, is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? So our third part of our practice today is going to be address those stories that we tell ourselves, because we can have different definitions. We can seek to find commonality in our definitions. We can listen to what others say to us, but sometimes what others say to us become what we say to ourselves. So for our third and final practice, I'm going to ask you to do something that I rarely encourage a large group of people to do. I'm going to ask you to should all over yourself. I want you to think of those statements that begin with I should. I should be making more money. I must be perfect. I have to get it right. You see, these should statements create judgment on ourselves. And as we work into this practice together, it's important that we acknowledge ways in which we're holding ourselves back. So I'm going to give you 6 just to start with, and I want you to just identify those that maybe resonate most with you. These are ones that I have personally felt. I should never be late. I think you all heard that I had 4 children. It's almost impossible to never be late. I have to get this right. As a recovering perfectionist, right never feels good enough. I should never let anyone down. I mentioned I was a caregiver, I'm a mother on my 2nd marriage. So the idea of letting anybody down feels more like commonplace than it does an anomaly. I see that I should be better by now is in the running. I purposely left these general for a reason. So for me, I should be better by now comes to having lost my mom in 2019 and still grieving. It comes from getting divorced when my children were very young and still co-parenting. It comes from, of all things, pandemic life and e-learning with, at the time, a first and a third grader. So whatever your better by now is, it seems that that's the front runner, that we want to be better. We want to be okay now. I must not fail. I make this statement in my head probably at least once a week, including for this keynote today. And I should never make a mistake. You know, we so often forget that we're human beings and we're prone to make mistakes. So the third piece of this, of course, is to acknowledge the stories that we're telling ourselves, but it's also to take the opportunity to rewrite them in a factual, kind, and civil way to ourselves. So here are just a couple of examples. I can never be late becomes, I prefer to be on time. I don't know many people that prefer to be late, but I prefer to be on time. Story number one. Story number two. It is important to me to do a good job. So many of us in the social service sector work so hard for others. So to be able to take the opportunity to say, not that I can't fail, but that it's important to me that I do a good job. Whew. Every time I read this one, it gets hard for me to admit that even I have limits and need help. Because the story that I tell myself quite often is that I have to do it all. If not me, then who? And that becomes a very isolating place to live for me. I should be better by now becomes I'm uncomfortable with how long this takes. I don't know about you, but processes like grief or working out or strategic planning seem sometimes to take forever. But the process is the perfection, not the progress. Number 5, I like to help others as much as I can. I think that's probably a more true statement than I can't fail anybody. I like to help others. Helping others is a core value for many of us. So using that as an opportunity to rewrite the story. I must not fail becomes this work is important. Whether it's to many people, whether it's to our communities, whether it's to our clients, whether it's to us ourselves who may have a personal connection to our mission, this work is important to many people. So these are just a few examples of ways that we can rewrite those negative narratives that are in our head, that we can think through those differences in a way that feels important. And so I want us to take a moment and to share some of your rewritten stories. You know, we really went into the messy middle and we talked about some of the nasty things others have said to us. We've shared what we've said to ourselves a bit. I want you to take a moment to rewrite your story. What do they become? And if we have any in the chat, I would love to hear those as well. We'll give it just a few moments for folks to write in, as it were, type in. Oh, I am doing the best that I can. Yes. I am enough as I am. Yes. I feel like each of these belong in a reminder in my own desk space. So thank you. I can't be perfect, but I can improve. It's okay to not be okay. I'm doing my best, and that's enough. I am worthy of love no matter what I look like. Love that one. I can't fix it all. I am a work in progress. That one makes my heart fuzzy. It's important to help everyone, but I have to set boundaries. Yes.
We have some great comments, Liz, here in the chat.
Please.
I can't fix it all. I have to love myself first. My experiences now will help my future and others. I am perfectly imperfect. I love making people happy, but it's okay if I can't. I think I can. I will try. I will overcome. Some really good stuff in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for sharing.
Absolutely. And it's not easy to be in this virtual space and to share your courage like this. So I want to offer my gratitude again. What I also want to encourage you to do is whatever your rewritten story has become, that you use that as your North Star. You use that as, for me, a Post-it on your desk or a reminder that pops up on your smartwatch. Just this idea that you can't fix it all. Let it become your mantra almost, so that you can stop shoulding all over yourself and surrender to the story that you're telling yourself, to rewrite it for good. I mentioned you were going to have a Brene Brown moment. And so this is one of my favorite quotes of hers. When we have the courage to walk into our story and own it, we get to write the ending. There are lots of stories that I could write about being a caregiver before the age of 30. There are lots of stories that I've written about being left with 2 small kids by my previous husband. There are stories I've written about staying in Florida my whole life and not living anywhere else. But the more of this work that I do, the more that I own that me being a 4th generation Floridian is a point of pride. That me figuring out on my own as an only child how to help my mother live 9 more years and the best quality of life possible was an accomplishment. That being able to co-parent with someone who hurt me in such an extreme way is an accomplishment. So again, when we have the courage to walk into that story, to acknowledge it, no matter how much it hurts, we have the ability to rewrite the ending. So as a recovering perfectionist, as a type A, I often joke, type AA, I will tell you that I don't do surrender well. And I will also tell you that this work requires surrender. It requires space for you to admit that you're feeling discomfort, that you're hurt, that you're angry, that you're sad, that you're any of the other catalog of emotions that you may feel. And that to me is the trickiest part about this work. It requires surrender. It requires feeling and sometimes doing the really hard things. This means also that you have to not shy away from those really ugly, negative things that you've been saying to yourself. So again, I want to say thank you to those of you who were courageous enough to share. It takes a lot of courage to share this level of vulnerability with virtual strangers, but I hope that it points out that you're not alone. That said, let me be real for a minute. Because maybe you're not ready to do this work. Maybe you're not ready for surrender. Maybe you're not ready to even acknowledge any level of negativity. Maybe you're in a season of life where every day feels like a challenge. That is okay. Because this work takes a readiness to receive. It takes a willingness to lean into that. And sometimes it means that it's like a practice. I'm not always ready to do this work. There are times and moments and seasons where I have to put it on pause. And I hope that you know that that's okay for you too. That you have the chance that even though it's painful, that you come prepared in its best possible way, because I can tell you from experience that this work is valuable and it is meaningful, and it will break you open in such wonderful, beautiful ways. Come back to this work when you're ready. Words only have power over us if we let them. They only have a meaning if we assign it to them. But to do that, we have to acknowledge those things. And we have to acknowledge the stories we're telling and the impact we're having on our own lives. Because if we don't write those stories, we don't rewrite those narratives, they carve neural pathways in our brains and they repeat over and over. So let's rewrite our stories in a more positive way. Let's establish some common definitions of what we mean by things that matter to us, whether that's work-life balance, whether that's self-care, whether that's rest, whether that's service. Let's listen to the stories that we've been told. Maybe give yourself a warm blanket, a puppy or kitten, something that brings you joy as you do. And then let's address those stories we tell ourselves. So as we wrap up our practice for this morning, I want to leave you with two, I think, reframed words. You rock. The work that you do matters so much to our communities and to so many people. And in short, you matter. Thank you for sharing your courage. Thank you for sharing your humanity. And thank you for sharing yourselves with us this morning. I thank you so much for your service, for your dedication. And I know we're going to be welcoming an opportunity to take questions. You're welcome to use Menti, put them in the chat, and our folks will make sure that I get a chance to answer. So if you have any questions at this time, I'd love to hear what those may be. I also, again, want to just express my incredible gratitude for you and the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Liz. I have a question. A couple of people actually asking about what is the name of the book that you referred to. They would like to get that information.
Sure. I referenced a few books. So how about what I will do is list the books that I referenced, and I'll put them in a follow-up email to the committee so they can share. Brene Brown has about 8 books, and Susan Cain has 3 or 4. So I'll make sure to include the authors as well as their potential books that you might be interested in.
Perfect, perfect. And I see a one question: what is the easiest way to start being kind to ourselves?
Ooh. Oh, wow. So the consultant in me wants to say, let's define easy. What do we mean by easy? How about we start with what is the quickest way? Because I don't think, from my experience, for me, it's not easy for me to be kind to myself. So I will offer both the quickest and then what I think is an easier way to be kind to yourself. The first way is the quickest. So the quickest way is to just jump right in, right? Rip the Band-Aid off, jump into the deep end, listen to the negativity, but at the same time, have created space so that you can rewrite those things. Don't just jump in and drown, right? I tried that early on. It is not what I would recommend. Number 2, the easiest. Think about someone that you love and care about a great deal. And imagine that they are saying or feeling the same things that you are saying or feeling to yourself. And imagine what you would say to them. I don't think this work is easy, but I think when you think about, especially so many of us on this webinar, we're in service of others. So to be in service of others, to think about someone that we love and care about a great deal, it's often easier for us to be able to think about, of course you're not fat, you're gorgeous. Thinking about all of the way we support our friends, or of course you're not stupid, you're amazing. You have an intelligence on this particular topic that I would never be able to understand. So again, I think that comes into the easiness. Think about someone you love and care about and imagine they're saying the exact same things that you're saying to them.
Oh, great, excellent. Now, going with kind of in the same route, another question, which is really interesting. What do you recommend for mental health when we have a week full of microaggressions or unkind words?
Just a week? Oh, that's a great question. So I also want to be honest with my personal feelings about this. So I think that the last 3 or 4 years have been very difficult for a number of reasons. Civility being one of them, unkindness being part of it. As I mentioned, or as you mentioned, Yaya, in the entrance, my husband works as a CEO of a nonprofit, and sometimes he'll ask me for advice, and he experiences microaggressions. I have experienced microaggressions, and we have to check ourselves as part of that. But for us and our family, it comes from making our home a safe and welcoming place. And so we have children from 9, 11, 18 to 21. We're a blended circus. So making sure that we are both saying and enacting services in our home that let folks know that they can be who they are. In fact, one of the most important things I think I tell my kids is you can be upset about anything, but you don't get to take that out on people. So part of it is creating a space, whether it's a home base, whether it's your office space, that is safe, right? Psychologically and emotionally safe. The other part, if you don't have those spaces, is to figure out what brings you joy and what could kind of fill your proverbial bucket, right? Because this work is very draining. Burnout is a very real thing. And in many ways, that vicarious trauma that we have in serving those that are in crises impact us. So all that to say, the microaggressions, I think, have increased. I think the negativity and the lack of civility continue to increase. And so I say, we have the tools to build up our own reserves, whether that is through coming into community and sharing some of the very things I know we're going to share today, whether that is having an accountability partner that you can just say, look, I am experiencing this really hurts. Whether that's, I tend to jump right into data and research. That's one of my escapism portals of I want to understand microaggressions. I want to understand things like white privilege because I've benefited from it. And I want to understand how I can stop that cycle for my children. So I think there are a lot of different ways, and it comes back to you, whoever that asks the question, being the expert in this topic of you. You know what fills your bucket. You know what brings you joy. You know what brings you peace. Create, hold sacred that space so that you can process the things that are being said, so that you can decide, are you going to act on those things? And then you can decide again, what comes out of this? What is the lesson that I've learned from this? Is it sometimes I have to hold my tongue? Is it I'm going to put my efforts towards advocacy and allyship? So again, I think it comes back to what is the work, what is the time and space that brings this person or persons joy?
That's great, Liz. We have a lot of questions, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the conference, we will send those responses for the questions that we don't have the time to answer.
Absolutely.
We will send it out with an email after the conference. But there's a question, Liz, about written communications. Mm-hmm. A person said that written communications can be challenging. How do you respond to rude emails or texts?
Full disclosure, rude emails or texts do not make me happy. I usually have a moment or two where I get very angry and upset. And I feel it. Now, that is also not the moment that I pick up the phone or I respond to the email. I know what my cycle is. I'm like, oh, triggered. That's a trigger. Don't know what it is, but that's a trigger. And I will read it once. So that's kind of my process. And I will not continue to read it over again, because as I mentioned, I think these things carve some negative things in our head, negative pathways. So I'll read it once and I'll put it away, or I'll hide it, or I'll, kind of put a pin in it for later. Depending on, I'll say, how egregious I take it to be, I may take some time that afternoon or evening. I may also take some time to respond. The reality in a lot of our settings, though, is we may not have that time to respond. So in those cases, when it is a deadline oriented, I will respond and say, thank you for your feedback. I'd like to take some time to think about more about my response. So just very generic, very like, thanks for your feedback. But then, and I'll just be honest as well. I've had folks that have picked up the phone and called me, or I've had folks that have continued to try and get an answer out of me. And that's when we kind of go to phase 2, where I'll say, your message brought quite an emotional response for me, or it triggered me. And I want to make sure that I'm answering in a way of integrity. And so I would like for you to respect the time that I need to process what you said.
No, that's great, Liz. Yeah, sometimes
yeah.
we just
and then if not, get ready. So
yeah, sometimes we just have to pause, think again before responding, because communications through email, a lot of things get lost in translation.
Absolutely. And I will, I don't have it to grab right now, but there is a book actually that my therapist gave me that I think is a good one. It's called BIF. And I'll put it in my email follow-up. It's basically how to interact with emails and text messages and communications from folks that are trying to bully you.
Oh, that is great.
It's a really good resource. Yeah.
Very good. And speaking of books, Liz, I know that you mentioned that you're going to share a list of books, but I think that we're asking specifically about the book that you have written.
Yes.
If you can share that information as well.
Yes. So I have a couple of books that I've written, but I have gotten permission from my co-author, Margarita Sarmiento, who some of you may know. We have a book called Managing Courageously from the Middle Office. So serving others while authentically being yourself. And we're going to provide that ebook to everyone on the call today.
Okay.
And that will be coming a link. All you do is download it. And again, you can use it, share it, etc.
Did I hear right what you said? That you are providing a link for everybody?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That is a surprise. See, I am surprised.
Surprise.
That's see, yeah, we have an amazing audience. So like I said, we have one prize for everybody. Now we're going to have 2 prizes for everyone and another prize for the most engaged audience or person, in the audience, which is going to be really hard because the chat is on fire.
I was going to say, I'm glad I'm not a judge for that one. I
know. But thank you so much, Liz, for candidly sharing with us your personal experience and how those 2 words from your son could have the power of ruining your day. But you made the choice of rewriting your story. I was once told that I shouldn't consider pursuing a bachelor's degree because of my accent. And I decided, like you, Liz, to rewrite my story by pursuing a bachelor's degree in psychology, then a master's degree in psychology, and I just recently got an MBA from the University of Tampa. Words have tremendous power to change our path. At the end of the program, we will have a special guest, like I mentioned, to announce the Grace Prize that everybody will receive. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Devona Pierre, Executive Director, Organizational Culture and Engagement from St. Petersburg College. Dr. Pierre, I really like your signature. It includes the following words: connectedness, harmony, communication, input, and discipline. You are using the power of your words to send a constant message by using these words of affirmation. Thank you, Dr. Pierre.
Thank you. And I wanted to say thank you all so much for having me again to represent St. Petersburg College. I'm so happy to be here to welcome everyone and to say thank you for all of the work that you do in our community. We love that we are your partner in this work that you do throughout the county, really, with the people that you serve. And so we are so happy to be a partner with the Hispanic Outreach Center in order for us to be able to advance all people in this county, especially the Hispanic population. So thank you again for all of the work that you do. And to all of the participants, soak up this goodness. I just had an opportunity to listen to the latter part of Liz's presentation. And boy, I tell you, I can't wait to see that book. And you're absolutely right. The chat is on fire. The chat is on fire. So you have a wonderfully engaged community. I want to say thank you specifically, not only to the Hispanic Outreach Center, but to Joe Benavidez. Joe is an individual that has kept us connected, especially to the Hispanic community in this county. And we are thankful for him and thankful for the things that he has done to ensure that we have fortified our relationship with the Hispanic Outreach Center. So I wanted to just say on behalf of St. Petersburg College that we appreciate you all. And as we forge forward to make sure that everyone knows and understands that SPC is a place where everyone belongs, you belong at SPC, we look forward to a continual partnership in this work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Pierre.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for joining us. And now we're going to have a 5 minutes break. We're going to see a video from our diversity advocate sponsor, St. Petersburg College Foundation. And so 5 minutes break to grab something to drink or stretch your legs, but come at 10:10 to be delighted by an amazing panel of community leaders who are using their words to make an impact in their community. 5 minutes break. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us back. And I'm bringing Liz back to moderate an amazing panel of 4 community leaders that are making a difference in their community by using the right words. So Liz.
Great,
welcome
thank
back.
you. Thank you, Yaya. You didn't think you were done with me yet. Thank you, everybody, for getting back on time and jumping in. I know we have 4 amazing panelists who you're going to get to meet here in just a few moments. I want to just address, man, that chat is on fire, but I will say as an empath, hard to read. Feel free to save the chat if you haven't yet. I think it will help you on a dark day, perhaps just a day you're looking to see that you're not alone. I will also say thank you for those of you who offered additional resources like Ayana. Yes, love her. I know as well, I saw some great other additional pieces. So I would highly recommend taking the chat, saving the chat, and I would also highly recommend using Menti. If you haven't already, you're welcome to steal any activity you saw today and use it as your own. It's a great conversation starter. So jumping into our panelists and brave conversations. So we're going to flip this up a little bit because I think many of us know how panels go, and we'll say, let me read Marcus's very long and lengthy bio. Let me read Marielle's very long and lengthy bio, and then Ty's, and then Virginia's. And then by the end of it, we're like, okay, so was Marcus the person who did this, or Marielle the person who did this? So instead, we're going to just flip this on the script and just start right with our questions, part of which they'll be able to share their bio and explanation with you. So I'm going to kick us off with Virginia first, and then we'll kind of go down the line of the pictures here. We'll go Virginia, Ty, Marielle, and then Marcus, because I want to ask the question of Virginia is, what is your leadership journey to date? And how has the power of words or language influenced it? I know, there she is. I was going to say, I know she's on here somewhere. Hi.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. So your leadership journey to date, Miss Virginia, and how the power of words has impacted it and you.
Okay, so I have a long leadership path because I have been recently worked in a counseling, and I was a counselor in a leadership camp, and it was a really unique opportunity because I was working with like 66 kids for a whole week, and they were all in the ages 13 and 18. Mind you, I'm 16. So when I was there, I had to tell them that I was older so they can give me a little bit more of respect. But it was really tough. It was really hard for me because I had to be the one there that was telling them what to do. I had to be the leader. I had to tell them instructions and guide 67 kids and 66 kids. It was not easy at all. And it was like a point that they were calling me bossy and they were calling me names because I was trying to get them to do the activities of the day. And with those stuff going on, and I also had a bunch of other counselors, but the coordinators of the program named me mini court director because they could only handle so many kids at the same time. So I was like, okay, I have this responsibility now. They're looking up to me. I have to be really responsible about all of this. So there was a lot of pressure on me.
Right.
And with those kids calling me bossy and that I want to lead everything and that I think that I'm the CEO, it was really hard because I'm just trying to do my job and trying to make them do the activity by the end of the day. So it was really hard when you're just trying to do your best at what you're doing, but then they're just like, oh no, you're just trying to be bossy. And those words impacted me for the rest of the week because I'm like, okay, now they don't want to work with me. They think that I'm just trying to tell them what to do and what to not do. And at the end of the day, I'm one more kid like any of them. So they really did impact me by the end of the week. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to let them do whatever they want now. But yeah, I think that I may or may not have a really strong voice or a really strong tone towards them, but they could have worded that in any other way.
Well, Virginia, thank you for sharing all of that. Saw a lot of action on the chat about lying about your age. And I started teaching at 21. So I definitely know that. We actually joked that I was going to get asked to prom because I was teaching high school. So I understand the need to lie about your age. I also now understand in my mid 40s that people are like, how old are you? I'm like, don't ma'am me, I'm in my 30s. So I appreciate you sharing that aside, but I also recognize that the word bossy had so much influence over you, even in a week, that you kind of were like, I'm going to just stop being the leader that I know you are and just let the kids kind of do what they want. So thank you for sharing that, because I think in so many ways, we all only have so much energy to do our best. And as a parent, I can tell you there is sometimes when I'm like, why am I restricting this? I'm making my job harder. But part of your role as well in this camp opportunity is to make better people. You're helping to grow good humans. So kudos to you for your resilience in that. And gosh, 66 kids sounds like sainthood. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Ty, I'd love to hear from you about your leadership journey and kind of the power of words and language and how it's impacted you.
Absolutely. So for me, starting off, oh, there goes my camera. But so for me, starting off, my leadership journey started a little bit after high school. Graduated in 2015, and I went straight into United States Marine Corps boot camp. That's where I found out, like, one of my life goals is to become a good leader and a great leader as best as I possibly can. And of course, through boot camp, we're getting told very, very much negative words throughout that whole process, being broken down, breaking who we are as a person, and for the drill instructors that do it to build you back up, as a better person, as a better individual, to be a leader and to become a Marine, right? And that's what everything that means for that. So one of the inspiring words I got after 3 months of being broken down, my drill instructor came up to me, handed me my Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, the title of Marines, and said that your inspiration is not normal, right? Your motivation, the amount of motivation that you have is very unique, and to keep that, because that's going to inspire others. And that's something no one has ever told me before, because I'm very ADHD, I'm very extrovert, I'm very bouncy, talk to a lot of people. And I never realized that no one has told me something like that before. So that's where it all starts. And going forward with my career and my civilian career, is like, how do I take my leadership skills, defining and building it up through the military into civilian, and to things that are important to me, is like community service, helping others, and being able to kind of not transfer 100% of everything I learned in the military as a leader to a civilian world, being able to pick out the things that make sense and to lead my peers that are not military oriented and be able to guide them and teach them the skills that I had as a leader. So being able to build those skills, transfer it, and utilize them efficiently. So that's what my leadership path has looked like. And it's coming out very, very well to like today, where I'm in a corporate environment, and I'm the youngest on my team. I am the newest guy on my team, but I can step up to the plate and perform, and to even dish out leadership advice, leadership skills to my peers that are older than me, and show that I can perform on the same level as they can because of the experiences that I have.
Well, first of all, I will echo what I'm seeing in the chat as well, which is our tremendous gratitude for your service. So thank you for, again, it feels like sainthood. We have 66 kids, we have Marine boot camp. I don't think I'd like to do either one of them. But thank you, because I think, Ty, for us to hear that your inspiration and it kind of came at a weird place when you were being broken down, right? And it's something that's carried you on. And I also saw a couple comments about, isn't it amazing what a few words of encouragement can do in a life? And I mean the adverse, right? You think about students, kids, adults who've been told that they're worthless or they'll never amount to anything, and what that then does for them. So Ty, I just thank you so much for sharing that kind of continuity piece of how that's really serving you now. So Miriel, I'm going to ask you, I know a little bit of your leadership journey, but I want to hear a little bit more about the power of words and how it's impacted you and kind of what's led you into this moment and at this conference today.
Sure. So the first thing is I have to tell you, sometimes if the word leader is used in reference to me, I'm like, I'm sorry, who, what are you talking about? Where? Because I'm looking to other people and I'm seeing them as leaders much more often than myself. However, in pondering this question, what I think about is that for me, it's really been about being a learner, right? It's one thing to have a certain personality type. It's one thing to perhaps feel comfortable, speaking in front of people or guiding conversation or anything like that, which maybe comes a little bit more naturally to some of us than to others. It's an entirely different thing to learn how to do that responsibly, to learn how to do that in a way that is authentic, kind, vulnerable, all of these things that, we've started to talk about already, Liz, with your keynote. And so that's really been what I try to lean on the most is what is it that I don't know, which is most things, right? Most of us don't know most things. And then chip away at that so that I can do my job sort of with a sense of responsibility and sensitivity to the potential, right, that I have to impact, again, to sort of to the point of this whole time that we're spending together, to either positively or negatively impact other folks and the responsibility that comes with that. So I'll stop there.
I love that leader and learner. And I know, Marielle, you've heard this quote from my grandmother, but this idea of the truly educated never graduate. And there's some great idea, and I'll be honest, it's not my grandmother. She's quoting someone. So she's brilliant, of course. But that idea of being a strong leader means that you are in constant learning mode. You're in constant improvement mode. And I probably am not the only one, Marielle, who heard you say, when someone says leader, I look the other way and went, you? Really? You're one of the people that I put on my top 10, right, Marcus? And I see you shaking your head and I was like, really? So I appreciate you sharing that vulnerability too, because I think so many folks look at any of us on the panel here and be like, oh, they've got it together. They're a leader. And we are in constant evolution. And so I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a really important piece for us to remember, that leadership is a journey, not a destination. So thank you. So Marcus, I would love to hear from you about your leadership journey to date and kind of how the power of words has impacted and influenced you.
Yeah. So Liz, first, I want to thank you for not reading the bios, because the thing about a bio is it always tells you what someone's done and what they are doing, but it rarely ever speaks to who they are and who they be in their being, right? And if we're human beings, not human doings, then what does that look like via a bio? So I appreciate you for allowing us to kind of speak into the space and do this a little bit differently. So my name is Marcus Brooks, as you all have seen. I'm the son of Eleanor Lovett Brooks and Melvin Brooks Sr., and I named them because leadership was never going to be a choice for me. I will also say that as I bring my voice into the space, I want to be intentional about naming my racial identity because of the presence and primacy of what that has meant to me along my journey, both good, bad, or indifferent. And much like many of the people on this call, much like many people on this panel, leadership started for me before I even knew I was leading. I go back to third grade in Miss Egger's class when they told me, hey, your job is to get the class from here to the media center in a straight line without breaking formation. And I remember the responsibility that created in me, and then all the way to being a board member for the organization I now work for at the Foundation for Healthy St. Petersburg. This idea of leadership has always kind of been a part of my life. The one thing I do realize, though, and this has also come through me via quote and mentorship, it's that to be a leader, it doesn't mean I will, hey, follow me. All right, everyone come behind me, get on my back, I got this. For me, it's really set in as I'll go first. And depending on how I go will determine whether or not I am worthy of being deemed a leader. And so that's something that I've always kept with me. And then also the realization that any gifts or skills or talents that I'm perceived to have, and I hold that word perceived highly because it really is in the eye of the beholder. Any gifts that I'm perceived to have, I have an obligation to share them and let them go and hope that any good that comes of them will continue on for the next generation. So it's kind of this idea that I'm a vessel in this experience, whatever leadership looks like. Hopefully I'm adding value, and I know that when it's in the hands of someone else, they're going to do an even better job of taking it to the next level.
Thank you, Marcus. I think I love the shout out to your parents. It's awesome. I appreciate as well that I'll go first mentality. I mean, if you think about movies, if you think about, strong researchers, there are folks that are like, we're going to send the interns first. We're going to send the front line first. But to your mode of leadership, it's really, I'll go first and help lead the way, but also hold a hand out to help folks follow in a path that we've designed together. And I love that you said in reference kind of the gifts that you have to give, but it's interesting about leadership not being a choice, because I know that can also have its own heavy crown, so to speak. So I appreciate you sharing that as well. And just kind of, we're going to pass the mic a little bit reversed here. We're going to go to Marcus, then Ty, then Marielle, and then Virginia with our next question. But you each come from such unique personal and professional backgrounds. It was hard, honestly, to design questions after I got to meet you. So, in what ways are you navigating an environment that we're in of kind of this constant information, even re-information, retractions, et cetera, that change while still standing in your integrity? So Marcus, we'll start with you on that one. So the question again, how are you navigating this constant influx of information and still staying in your integrity?
Yeah, so as I gave that shout out to my parents a moment ago, but it's almost like knowing your history almost forces you to truly stay in this context of who you are. I'll be honest in saying I knew some of my history until it wasn't until my 30s that I began to ask questions of my ancestors who have now transitioned, and my parents and my cousins and my family members. What does this last name truly mean, and what are some of the things that I'm not aware of? And the more I've learned, it's actually kind of redesigned and reshaped who I actually am. Like many people, I've been a product of my socialization, from the schools that I attended to the relationships that I had and all the things. And there's a power in unlearning. The more I unlearn, the more I show up differently, the more I show up as the person I believe I was truly meant to be. And so it's cool. I'm learning while unlearning. Some of the things that I was socialized to understand, I'm questioning my assumptions, and other things that I feel like I should have known, I'm learning and going deeper into those. And so I hope that in a day-to-day basis, what you all are getting here today, the team that I lead here at the foundation, hopefully they're getting the best version of myself, and the full understanding it's the best version of myself in this current moment. I am hoping that growth is always present and always happening. And so it's kind of this delicate balance of being on the balcony and the dance floor, of knowing that you get to play in the middle somewhere, but integrity and who you are will always guide where you go.
I appreciate that. I love, and I see resonating as well, that concept of unlearning, right? I think so many of us raised in different communities, and I was raised in Key West, which is a fairly isolated community, and more accepting than some or others. But just this idea of, how our history, the legacy of your history. I love that piece of understanding where you've come from, but also recognizing the power of unlearning, while you also recognize that this is a moment in time. Your leadership and your integrity are strong, but also this moment in time is fluid. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I think that's a good reminder for all of us here. So Ty, same question about your experiences and how you navigate kind of the information and the amount of information and still stay in your integrity.
And which is a great question. And when I saw this, I really had to think to myself, like what it takes to keep up with the times, right? Like that phrase itself, keeping up with the times, like keeping up with social media, keeping up with news. And it's a lot, right? And as I've gotten older and became an adult, it's like, wow, there's a lot of things I have to look out for and to understand these things, and how hard it is for people of past generations to even like understand that to today's time as well. So one of the biggest things to be able to be on top of it is to learn how to pivot. And that's something I've had to do a lot of as a growing adult and growing into the military, going through the ranks, is being able to pivot. Not everything's going to be coming my way in a good way, and being able to sidestep, observe the situation, come back in and take head on to those situations. And even just learning these new items, and check to Marcus with unlearning these things as well, because when how would I say, the circumstances that we grew up in are very, very unique. And we've learned a lot of things that are good and not necessarily good in today's social impacts as well. So being able to unlearn stigmatisms about my culture, or even just the way as a oldest son in the family and how they're supposed to run things, being able to unlearn those aspects and to build new ones and to pivot into today's world is super essential. So I think that answers the question for that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing. I don't know. I think some of us have a love-hate relationship with the word pivot, but I appreciate you sharing it. That's a pandemic leftover. But I also appreciate, as you said, that idea of keeping up with and keeping on top of information. I often feel like I am failing that. Like, how do you keep up with the world? How do you keep kind of with all the information? There's just so much out there. So I appreciate you saying as well that you have to also change your sights, right? You have to decide, today I'm really interested in X, but tomorrow it's Y. And then of course, when news happens, being up on what's happening in our communities and in our world. So I appreciate that. Yes, Julia, not just a Friends reference. I see Ross in my head too. Don't you worry. Marielle, I want to ask you the same question. And Marielle and Virginia, I'm going to add this part because this came out of our group. But as you're talking about, how you navigate the constant information, just know that the crowd wants to also know what is something that you've had to unlearn. So Marcus and Ty, I'm going to come back to you, but I see it. I see you all, and I want to make sure we come back to that. So Marielle, first start with, if you don't mind, kind of how you navigate all the information that you run into and how you stay in your integrity. And then if you don't mind, to share one thing that you've had to unlearn with us.
Sure, I'm happy to. So the focus of the work that I do in the community and really just in my life is connected to diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging, truth, reconciliation, right? And so many of these things that that are important, that are necessary, but that are difficult. And so there are waves. I've been doing this work for a minute, and so this is not the first time, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this. This is not the first time that we are living in a moment that is particularly challenging, connected to folks like me, like so many of us here, who are trying so hard to create a more equitable world for all, to dismantle systemic racism, to push against so many harmful policies and practices. And so it is very challenging because it is my responsibility to know what is going on. At the same time, there is but so much that any one of us can take. And there are definitely times where I have to pause and I have to say, I need to know this, but I don't need to know this right now. I need to learn more about what's happening, but I don't think I can do this right now. And to give myself permission to pause, to take care of myself, and then to continue doing the work. Part of that too, I'll say, is while I am part of some of the marginalized communities that are under attack, I am also swimming in privilege. And with that privilege comes a responsibility to stand up for folks who do not have that power in those spaces. So again, it's balancing that sense of responsibility with knowing my own limits and taking care of myself.
I love that.
So that's that.
So that's that. So let me just, what I heard you say is what I think is appreciative, what I appreciate, excuse me, the waves, right? The seasons of incivility. I don't know the nice word to put it, but just that this too shall pass and this too may come again. But this idea of we're in the fight that we're in right now, and that it is your responsibility to know what's going on, but at the same time, it's also your personal responsibility to press pause and to give yourself permission to do so. And I think that's a really important lesson for all of us, not only on the panel, but even from the comments I've been seeing from folks, is that permission to pause. So I won't, spoiler alert, don't know if that's what you unlearned, but what is something that you did unlearn as part of kind of this process?
So actually the unlearning thing, I went into a different space based on what Marcus and Ty shared. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in a Black and brown community. I say this all the time. If you've ever, been around me, you know that I mention this stuff all the time. So Newark, New Jersey, special place, love it. Very culturally affirming. I was surrounded by folks who felt like me. And so there was a lot of beauty and power to that. And I'm so grateful for that. At the same time, do you know what I had to unlearn? I had to unlearn what other people said I was.
Mm.
And I'll share a little bit more about that later on when I close out this wonderful experience that we're all having. But yes, other folks I did not realize had started to dictate who I was and how I navigated the world. And I had to unlearn that so I could free myself.
Love that. You also had a couple New Jersey shout outs. I'm just going to put that out there. A couple New Jersey folks in the house. All right, Virginia, last but certainly not least on the whole question, this idea of how you navigate the constant information that you're receiving and how you stay in your integrity. And then, of course, we'll follow up with what you may have had to unlearn. So please proceed.
Well, I think it's very important to stay true to yourself and keep your values and your morals. I think those are the stuff that could keep your integrity, especially in my case when I'm in school and then my history teacher, you're up there always telling you need to know your surroundings, you need to know your government, you need to know what's going on around the world. And it's only so much you can keep up with. And being in school right now, it's very overwhelming because I'm trying to do so many stuff at the same time. And you need to do community hours. I need to start applying for college. Think what you want to study. You need to be ready for this test. And then I'm also trying to not only focus in school, but I want to know what I want to do with myself and what I like, and I want to learn those stuff too. So I think it's very important to, like Marielle said, to take the pause. I think it's very important because you're gonna get overwhelmed and it's gonna be so much in your head that you're gonna lose track of your values and the truth about yourself, trying to please everyone, because that's something that I really do a lot with my family and my friends. I try to help everyone and please everyone and do everything at the same time, and you can only handle so much. So I really think that taking the pause and taking 1 or 2 days off to just remind yourself and take a break and take care of yourself, because you are gonna get lost into a lot of other things and you're not gonna remember your true self and your values and your morals.
I will echo what I see in the chat as well. As if I had learned that lesson at your age, or even a decade before it took me, I would tell you your perspective on values aligned with integrity is really important, I think, for all of us who work in the mission-centric businesses, but this idea of individual values and care of self. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think it's important for you and at the stage that you're in, but all of us to remember that we don't have to be on the constant grind. We can take that permission to pause, whether it's pandemic, grief, after a conference, hint, hint, the idea to process some things. So I appreciate you sharing that, Veronica, and would love to hear, I know you're learning a lot right now, but is there anything that you've had to specifically unlearn so far?
I'm trying to learn, to unlearn, to not only to, like I said, be true to yourself, but also I've had to put myself first sometimes, and then I had to unlearn that I need to care for others. It's been trying to balance that out, because like I said, I'm trying to learn the difference between helping everyone and doing everything for everyone and pleasing everyone, but also reminding myself that I go first and that you need to put yourself first and respect yourself first in your time. And I can do both. So I am trying to balance that out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that balance. I don't know what the rest of your life will look like, but I imagine that's always going to be a fun part of life, of taking care of others, taking care of self, taking care of community. But it's an important piece to be acknowledging now, because if you acknowledge it, you can then decide how it impacts you. So thank you for sharing that. Ty and Marcus, you are not off the hook yet for this question. So what is something you had to unlearn? And Marcus, since it was your question or your statement to begin with, I'm gonna let you go last. But Ty, what is one thing that you've had to unlearn? I know you referenced a little bit about some things related to kind of your race and your culture and upbringing, but anything else that you'd like to share, or the same that you'd like to elaborate on?
No, absolutely. So, and I got time to think about this, so thank you guys. But a part of it goes into my culture, the way that I was raised, and as being the first, the first son of my family and the oldest. And I had to grow up very, very fast at a young age. It's the same thing what Virginia is doing right now, is being mature, being grown up to handle these items and responsibilities that I had. And gonna deepen a little dive into my backstory. I was 7 years old when both my parents were separated, and that left me, my mother, and two of my brothers. So single mother with 3 kids. Wasn't a fun time, but it was a huge learning experience for me. Cleaning around the house, changing diapers, learning to cook as best as I could as a 10, 12, 13-year-old going to elementary school, middle school, and balancing that as well. So being one thing that I had to unlearn was that I had, I saw this in the comments as well, is not to be hard on myself, and that everything isn't on me as well, right? To where I get to the point where I have to do this. I have to be responsible for this. If this doesn't happen, this something terribly wrong is going to happen, right? And that's a lot of pressure for a young teen growing up and being responsible for all this. So when I came to a realization that I had to unlearn this, and even to this day, I had to still in the process of unlearning of being hard on myself. But I started developing that very, very early on, that everything's going to be on me. If I mess up, that's okay. And even to our culture, oldest, in a lot of Southeastern Asian countries, it's the oldest son is responsible for everything. Even when the parents get older, they come in, move in with the oldest son, and the oldest son takes care of them. And a lot of cultures are like that as well. But being having that pressure and acknowledging that at an early age was super what's the word I'm looking for this? But I was very distraught about it. And now that I'm getting a lot older and learning a lot of these new experiences and learning these new things, and at the same time unlearning, it takes a lot of pressure off these things. So that's one of the greatest things I had to unlearn.
Awesome. Ty, thanks for sharing that. I think I'm seeing a lot of kind of echoes of taking that pressure off yourself to always have to be in charge, always have to get it right. It's a tremendous kind of yoke or weight that we all wear if we're in that position. So thanks for sharing that. I also, and Marcus, before I put you on the spot for this last question, I want to say thank you to our panelists, because they saw these questions ahead of time. But the amount of humanity that you all are bringing to these questions it just makes my heart happy. So thank you for your honesty and your authenticity. Marcus, no pressure, but what have you unlearned?
Yeah. So a little too much, if I'm honest. In the past 5 years, I've undergone a pretty significant personal transformation, just as a result of experiences that have happened around the country, happened personally, all of the above. One thing I think that I will share that I have unlearned is the societal view of Black culture, specifically in this country, and how I show up for that. So I grew up kind of in a tale of two cities, North Pinellas County and South St. Petersburg, South Pinellas County. So family in South, school, play, all the things in North. And so imagine a young Black boy, the only on the soccer team, one of few in his school, and you had to survive, essentially. And so what I never fully understood was, as I was attempting to survive, I was really just getting really good at assimilation, until I had to go back to South St. Pete to visit family, or to play basketball, or to go to camp. And the kids there made it very clear, like, where in the world is this person from? And I'm like, look at us, we're the same. And it's like, yeah, but no. Then I go back to North County and they're like, they would make comments. And so I'm going, where do I exist in this? So because I spent the majority of my time in North County because of school and just soccer and all the things, I begin to just adopt this way of living. The unlearning that I've had is that Black culture is a beautiful thing. It's who I am. It's what I am. My hair, my dress, the way I show up, the music I listen to is to be celebrated just like any other culture. And so the more I dive deeper into this understanding that Black history did not start at slavery, and it actually started way, way, way before that as some of the original people, that is a beautiful thing. So as I raise my two boys, I'm constantly showing them what it looks like and what it means to be Black in America, what it means to be Black in other countries. Blackness is beautiful, just like whiteness is beautiful, just like being Latinx is beautiful, Asian, it's all beautiful. No one sits above the other. And so that's one thing that as I begin to unlearn, I'm diving deeper and deeper into the rich history that is the kings and queens of the continent that I call home. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And again, shout out to this panel, because I'm sitting here as a bystander going, this panel is dope. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm actually a part of it. So yeah, just shout out to y'all. This is awesome. Thank you, Liz.
Absolutely, Marcus. And thank you. I would say if I had a mic to drop, I would drop a mic on your behalf, my friend. That was great. I will say, because of time and because of great answers, we're going to go to two kind of, I'll say, final questions that I think really get to the meat. And they're some of the more difficult questions, panelists. So just beware. Because we are talking about kind of embracing differences and power of words, I really think these questions get to the heart of the work. So I want to start with the question about perception. This question, and let me give you the order so we don't have a moment. We'll start with Marielle, Ty, Virginia, and then Marcus. There's a perception that we have been having this conversation about inclusion and belonging for a long time. In fact, I've even heard people in our community say, when is it over? So what are some of the emerging trends or curiosities that you're seeing that give you hope that this conversation is moving forward in a manner? So Marielle, we'll start with you.
I'll share something kind of specific, but that I hope is a reflection of something broader. In the work, certainly, that I've been doing with NLC, we've seen some unfortunate diminishment of interest in engaging and supporting work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion from some folks, right? It's not universal, but it's definitely there and noticeable. That is painful. However, what I can tell you too is that with this sort of pendulum, or if you can imagine a seesaw, there are folks who then come around to the other side of that and push down hard and show up and support. So all of that to say is that sometimes, or really often, if I'm being completely honest, there are many times lately where I have been feeling discouraged, where I am just hanging on for some hope. And I remind myself that there are people like everyone here, everyone presumably everyone who is participating today, and like so many others who are doing this work, who are stepping up even more than before, who are bringing new folks into the conversation. And so that is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, yes, there is pushback, there is pain, there are things that are not fantastic happening, but there are people who are really stepping up as well. And so I look to that to be able to sort of continue forward.
Yeah, thank you, Marielle. I appreciate that. Ty, over to you. What are you seeing kind of from an idea of trends or curiosity that giving you hope that this conversation is moving forward and it's not just the same conversation we've been having?
So, and this one took me a time to like figure out as well, right? So the trend that I think for me, because I'm pointing it out too, that I'm starting to see is people and individuals finding who they really are, their identity, and for them to be able to live in their identity, and for other groups to be able to absorb that just as is, right? Because for me growing up with the idea of inclusiveness and diversity, it's, well, if you are in this bucket and you have these, you know, qualifications, you'll get absorbed in that bucket. Or if you are if you look like this or you act like this, you can get absorbed in this bucket. That's inclusive for those things. But what I'm starting to see now is people identifying who they are, and there are multiple different filters. There are multiple different attributes and uniqueness, and different groups and companies and, you know, corporations being able to absorb what they are and bring them in to create something, you know, unique. Well, that's more different. And I'm hoping that's a trend that I am actually seeing, that with social media and people being able to be their unique selves and be a part of a bigger company or a bigger organization, to utilize like their experiences and bring it in and to show, just to have a show for it, right? So that's what I'm hoping the trend is moving to. That's what I'm seeing, and maybe I'm hoping I'm not being nearsighted, that that's not, you know, the case for everyone. But I'm hoping that that is the trend and that it's moving in that direction.
Great. So Ty, thank you for sharing that. So we have some hope ahead of us so far, which is seeing that there are other people in and committed to this work. So we are not alone. So thank you. And Ty, to your point, that you are seeing more openness and acceptance of, I don't have to agree with how you live your life, but I can just let you live your life. And that whole idea of, you know, it's not pie, right? Just because you have a space in the world doesn't mean my space is less. So I think that idea is important as well. So thank you. Virginia, I want to go to you. I know, I will say from experience, I know a lot of folks put a lot of weight on your generation to like save us all. And I don't think that's fair. Just somebody who has an 18-year-old in my house, I don't think that's fair, but I would be curious to hear your perspective on what gives you hope when we think about things like this conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And what gives you hope as, I mean, you kind of think about your future?
Well, I think what gives me hope is that sorry, that was my dog. Sorry. What gives me hope is that there are like programs like the camp that I went that help kids get leadership and get those values that I think are important, like to save this generation. And they say safe because I think they're getting us more prepared. And the camp that I went to, it was really working on those social issues like stereotypes, women's rights, and discrimination. And I think it was 2 sessions. And each session had like about 50 and 60 kids. And I think by the end of the week, I made those kids like realize each topic that we can make a better world and that we are changing their points of view, because by the end of the week, they realize that all of those stuff that we went through, they think about it differently, they act about it differently, they want their friends to think about it differently. They were like, oh, I'm gonna share this to my friends. I wanna let them know that this is not like this is not like that. And I think we're working on that better. And in school, we are like learning how to react to discrimination and stereotypes and all of that. And I think when we are out of school, we act completely different. And once we see the difference between school and then real world, we actually see how we can apply those stuff in the real world. And Anytown, oh, that's the camp, Anytown, they did this workshop and it was like stereotypes, and it was like all around the room. They put like nationalities, and they were putting a bunch of mean stuff for African American, Hispanic, and European people, white people. And then once they all realized how they themselves made those ugly comments about it, I was like, okay, then it's our problem. Then we can change it, because if we don't put those words, we don't name ourselves like that, it's gonna be okay. We are the ones that are putting those labels. So after that camp went through, they all accepted each other, talked to each other, and there was like no discrimination, no stereotypes. We all agreed that we were all just human beings. And I think that's the hope that I have, that we are saving the generation, that at some point and someday we're all gonna realize that we're all humans and we should all take care of each other.
Thank you, Virginia. And yes, thank you. Shout out to the Anytown program. I know there are a lot of former Anytowners here on the webinar, as well as folks who have a personal connection one way or the other. So thanks for sharing that. Virginia, again, that idea of humanness being a connection as opposed to a division, I think is a really beautiful hope. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Marcus, last but not least on this question, what gives you hope?
Yeah, so the work is being done. I think regardless of what you're seeing in the various news outlets, many of us are still doing the work, and we're doing it boldly, and we're doing it with attention, and we're doing it with passion. The question I have here, though, is, are we really even having the conversation? Because I know I hear this all the time. It's like, when are you all going to do something? And so I always ask the question, without stated intention, is it really a conversation? Like, conversation can loosely be, I don't know, however you define it, right? It's exchange of ideas, which is exactly what we probably have been doing for a very long time. But what we're often missing is that defined intention going into these conversations. And so intention meaning, what do I hope to get out of this conversation? And then what am I willing to commit to in this conversation, right? To move towards action. And so if those two aren't defined, then we're basically going after each other. And we often forget that, we're products of our socialization. We're products of our experiences. That's what's shaping our beliefs and our actions. So if I don't take time and hold space to learn about your experiences, I'm never really going to hear you, see you, any of that. I'm just going to push my stuff. And so it becomes very divisive. What might it look like to hold space in a true conversation to better understand where someone's coming from, to identify that commonality and that common ground? So I often struggle with this idea that we've been talking about this forever, because quite honestly, I'm not sure we've really been having the conversation in a way that's constructive and is going to lead towards action. And then again, many of these things are 400 years old. And so it will take time. And so how do we recalibrate and understand that it's going to take continued work, and I may not see it in my lifetime. My hope is 30 years from now, when my kids are my age, they won't be dealing with a lot of the same things that we are.
Thank you for sharing that thought for hope. And it's almost as if you knew the last question I was going to ask you, Marcus. So I'm going to ask you to come back off of mute, because I'm going to start with you first, because I feel like we get pushback. Oh, we've been having this conversation, seeing a lot of good feedback on the chat saying, but are we, so to your point, are we really having the conversation? But the last question I have for the entire group before we go to any specific questions is, how do you personally stay curious in a conversation with someone who holds very different values or opinions than you? And just so you know, Marcus, I'm going to go you, Virginia, Ty, and then Mariel.
Perfect. My father-in-law is a white male who holds very different political opinions that I have, has a very different upbringing that I have, and I love that man. I would step in front of a car for him, because we have both committed to holding space for one another's stories. The most beautiful thing about this relationship between the two of us is I will never know what it's like to walk in his shoes. Equally, he will never know what it's like to walk in my shoes. And so what I share with him, he really can't negate, because you're not a 37-year-old Black man. I hate to break it to you, buddy, and vice versa, right? And so as I'm learning from him and as I'm hearing about his story, it's more from an inquiring mind. One of my favorite people, Virgil Abloh, who passed a couple, maybe about a year ago, he was the head creative director for Louis Vuitton, first Black designer in that position. And he had this motto of the purist and the tourist. And oftentimes, especially in this work, we come at it as purists. Like, I know equity, I know racial equity, I'm the person, and I don't understand why everyone else isn't doing what I'm doing. And he really speaks to, when you go to a different country and you're a tourist, you're just so interested in everything, right? You know nothing and you want to learn everything. How do you hold that mindset when you're having a conversation with someone who has a different lived experience as you? Be a tourist, ask all the questions, go deeper, and then leave that conversation with a different mindset or a different vantage point. So that's what I would offer to everyone. Consider when you're being a purist and when you should maybe consider being a tourist, in the great words of the late Virgil. So yeah, I just want to throw that out there. Thank you, Liz.
Absolutely, Marcus. Thank you. I love that purist versus tourist And I always think as a tourist, I get to go into a new locale or country and then I get to leave. I can go back home to the place where things make a little bit more sense, perhaps. So no, I think that's, but do that in a way that I feel some sort of enlightenment. So I love that kind of analogy from Virgil. So thank you for sharing that. So Virginia, how about you? How do you hold space for curiosity in conversation? I mean, and you're fresh out of any town. So I'm sure you have some tips for us. How do you personally hold that space in conversation and stay curious and stay in that tourist space?
Well, I'm gonna keep using those examples from anytime because it was like I was a delegate last year and I volunteered this month and last month. So I learned a lot, and listening to all of those kids' stories from different backgrounds, and some of them came from foster homes, some of them had like issues with their families, some of them came from home takers, I don't know the word right now, but they have a difficult background. And listening to them was really hard because I had to make connections with them. They were in their dorms, and they came on like 12 at night and knocked on my door because they were having some issues. And I had to listen to them. And even though it was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I had to listen to them because I was really invested in this camp, and I was taking it very seriously because I wanted to give them the same experience that they gave me when I was a delegate. And one of these kids came like at 3 in the morning, and she was like came here crying because one of the workshops that we did was a lot for her, was too hard on her. And she was telling me her story about her family issues, and I'm not gonna go deeper into that because we're all gonna cry, but she was telling me her story, and I was like, it's 3 in the morning. I need to get myself together, because I wasn't like, oh, I don't care, go to your room. But I was like, I need to listen to her. She needs someone to talk to, and she needs someone to be there for her. And I think it's really about having empathy, because if I was in her place, I would need someone. And I think even though it was a very, very difficult conversation that I didn't really know what to say, because even though, I went through training and I went through some stuff before that to be ready for this, I wasn't really able to manage that conversation. All I can really do was just listen to her and let her know that I'm here, that if she needs anything, I'm here for her. But I think it really did impact me, because now I see how people may need you in a certain moment, and that you need to be available for them. And like I said, I like to help others and be there for others. So I think it was a really positive moment for the both of us, because she had someone there for her. Now she can count on me whenever she needs me. And what I learned from it is that whatever given moment in that camp, we told them that if they needed someone, they could count us at any time. And she called me at 3 in the morning, and I was there and I did my job, and I felt good about it, because then her and I made a really deep connection. And after that conversation, we were having some nice moments with her. And I think I really did a good job counseling with her. And now we're best friends. I think when she connected with me, she was like, oh, she's just another kid like me. She is having other issues like me, and I'm not the only one. And I think having empathy with her, it was what made it different.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I don't want to say it's easy to be empathetic, but I think so many of us, myself included, get caught up in that empathy is like some sort of superpower, when really what you did was hold space. And to hold space and not know, and know that you're not going to say anything that's going to fix her situation, but just to hold the space for her meant a great deal. And so I think that's a really great entry point. I think we're getting a lot of tidbits. Marcus, now I feel like I'm directing the panel, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. So Miriel, last but not least, before we take some audience questions and bring Yaya back on to help facilitate that. I of course asked you last because I know you have great answers to these questions too, but how do you hold space and curiosity when you're having conversation with someone who has such diverse or completely adverse beliefs than you do?
Well, it takes a lot of grace, and it is definitely not easy. But one thing, when I can summon the grace, right, and the sort of the inner peace to do this, there is a realization that I've had that is quite painful. It's kind of a blow to my ego, to any idea that I have about how wonderful I might be, which is this: if I was born that person in their body, in their context, raised by the people who raised them at the time that they were raised and had the experiences that they've had up until this point, what are the chances that I would have that person's opinions?
Mm. Yeah.
And as heinous and as awful as those opinions and perspectives may be from where I'm sitting, it is by chance that I was not born into their very body and their very circumstances.
I feel like we need to rewind and say that one more time, because that was powerful. So can you say, when you find the grace, what you say to yourself?
Sure. And friends, I fail at this at least 50% of the time, just to be clear. I'm summoning, our better selves when I say this. But yeah, what are the chances that I would think the same thing that this person is thinking if I were them? And when I say them, I mean fully them, encompassing how they navigate this world, the way their brains are wired, the way they show up physically in the world, because we have experiences based on what we look like. All of the different pieces that create our foundational experiences. If I had all of those things too, would I have the very opinions that I currently in my body detest?
That one's going to have me thinking all weekend, Marielle. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to have to summon a lot of grace for that one, but I appreciate you saying that one. That's a powerful one. Well, I know we're going to bring Yaya back on to help facilitate any questions that I may have missed via chat, but this is also your opportunity to ask any specific questions of our panelists. Again, I met most of these folks for the first time just a few months ago, and I can tell you it has been an honor to help share just a little bit of their awesomeness with you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Yaya, to help us facilitate the conversation a little bit further. So Yari.
Wow, that's what I just want to say something in the chat, but I couldn't do it. With so many different perspectives, so many different way of thinking, and just wow. That's the word that I can use. Wow. So thank you. We have a couple of questions, and one of them is we all have said something hurtful. Tell about a time you have to apologize for it.
So I'm not sure if we're going to popcorn this one, but I can definitely shout out for this. So, and I believe everyone has, done that time. So speaking about the reprimands that you had to do to, realize that, for one, that you're wrong, that there was something wrong. And in the heat of the moment, you can say things that you really don't mean, right? That always will happen. Even with the amount of self-control that you have, your emotions will come through and push through the training that you will put the mental training you will put yourself through. So going through, and I'm trying to find one, right? And I have a good one. I have a really good one. So for back to my story where I was the oldest for two brothers, kind of, and I was raised in a slightly broken family, but I had to play older brother, mentor, big brother for two of my brothers. And there's no guidebook on that. There's no as much as your parents are going to tell you, this is how things are supposed to be done, things like that. But when you're a single mom working 24/7 to support these kids, you don't have the time to teach your oldest what you're supposed to do with these two kids and with the kid himself. So for me, I had to replicate what I saw through my parents to my little brothers and find out if that was like, you know, the right thing to do or not. And as I got older, I would say like 18, like around 18, 19, after I got back from boot camp and I got to see my brothers again after months and months of training, sitting down with both of them and letting them know that I'm sorry for not being the big brother that I needed to be because of how our families and stuff were, you know, growing up. There was no rule book for this. I wasn't taught the right way. I know I wasn't taught the right way. So kind of coming up and admitting to that so that I can grow and build that bridge of a connection with them and let them know that I, like, from now, that that's going to change. Like, that what is done in the past, and you know, I apologize for that. Let me be the big brother that I need to be for you guys. So that's one of the hardest ones that I had to do.
Hi, thanks for sharing that. And you did pick up on, we will do popcorn. So if anybody else wants to share on the panel, just come off of mute and you can jump right in.
I got a quick one, and this is the one I share with a lot of folks, especially in our work, this racial equity work to improve the overall health of our community. When I was 14, I was working at a camp. I had the 9-year-olds, and one of the kids says to me, "Mr. Brooks, why do you talk like that?" And my response in the moment was, "It's called an education, and if you stay in school, you will sound like this too eventually." Thinking, sent that kid on the right path. Like, good, he's gonna. Took probably 10 years went by, and I was like, wait a minute, like, that was dehumanizing. That child speaks the way he speaks as a result of the neighborhood he lives in, and that's perfectly fine. And there is no correct way or this American way to do this. And I actually had the opportunity to see him again like 15 years later, working at St. Pete College. So shout out to St. Petersburg College. His name's George, and I'll say his name because I will never forget this young man. And I had the opportunity to say to him, "George, I said something to you a long time ago." And he's like, "Look, no, I stayed in school and all that." And I had to go deep into, yes, and however you speak, however you dress, however you show up is perfectly fine and should be celebrated. Be yourself. And we hugged it out. I'm sure it did. I don't know if it affected him the way it affected, but it affected me. Like, I thought about that every single day as I raised my consciousness. So that was probably one of the most difficult conversations I had to have. And just the blessing to be able to full circle that, because if I never got to talk to him again, I don't even know how I would have felt. That would have been horrible.
Amazing, amazing. Anybody else want to share? Or I have another question that I'm really intrigued to ask.
I'll go next. So I think this is a good one that got me thinking for a bit. So I was doing my community hours at Hispanic Services Council, and this family came in, and they had this girl. She was like about 13 years old, and we were doing an activity, and I was like, "Where you come from? What's your favorite food from where you come from?" And then she didn't remember like the name where she came from. And then I was talking to her like, "How do you not remember where you come from? Like, you just got here." And then she was like, "No, I don't remember." So I didn't realize that what I said got to her, because then she like got quiet. She didn't want to participate. So I like started talking about how I like this from my country, I'm from this place, and everybody else did, but she didn't want to. So I took her out, we talked about it. And then she was like, "I don't remember because we've been crossing borders for like the past month." I was like, "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." And it wasn't anything that I could say to make her feel better. And I totally understand that she was probably going through a lot of stuff through months, and she might not even remember where she was. So then I told her, "No, I am really sorry. I understand." She was like, "No, you don't understand. You might get it, but you don't understand. You were never in my shoes." And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Like, I was really in that moment where like I was had no words. Then I really did understand the meaning of like understanding and getting it. Like, you might get what she's saying, but you're not understanding what she went through or what she actually meant. And that got to me because I be like, "Oh yeah, I understand. But do you really understand?" what she went through, why she said that, why she doesn't remember. So I was like, I'm so sorry. I know if you don't want to participate, that's okay. And I had to take her to her mom. And then after that, I felt really bad for a couple of days because I was like, I need to watch what I'm saying because she went through some stuff and I kind of like triggered all of those stuff that she went through. And by saying, oh, yeah, I get it, I understand, it wasn't helping.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Virginia, for sharing that. Ty, I have a question actually for you as a follow-up from what you share about your brothers. When you sat down with your brothers, how do they receive your message?
Yeah, so I actually to put the answer on that bit too. So I was 18, 19 around the time, and they were 10, 11. There's a 6-7 year bridge between both of them and me. So when it comes to me remembering that, it was very solemn, right? It was kind of the realization, and I think this is where we all three was realizing this is for them. Even for me growing up at a young age, I had to mature, so did they as well growing up. So that moment that I had with them, and this was very late at night too, and we just kind of stood there, sat there, and just realizing that we lived like a very abnormal like life compared to a lot of like our peers that we know, people we went to school with. Like that was the realization, we lived a very rough life. So it was very, very sad moment for us to like take in. I know for one of them, he's still kind of reluctant, or not reluctant, that's not the right word, but remembers the things of the past that has occurred between all of us. So they took it in and they wanted to work with me and allow me to give them, or to them give me a second chance to be better and improve myself to be the brother that they need to be. So it was a very, very positive, very sad, but very positive reaction from them, right? Just realizing that these three kids are like have grown up in the way that they did and what came out of it.
Thank you so much, Ty. Another question that I have is, how do you react seeing the culture that we are seeing right now in our state? It is disheartening to see people cheering, going backwards and rewriting history. Who wants to be the brave one?
All right, I'm going to hop in only because I want to hope my courage is contagious here. I mentioned that I'm a 4th generation Floridian. It is also quite obvious that I am a middle-aged white woman. There's no nice way to say it. It pisses me off. It makes me ashamed to be part of this state. It has made me question my pride in being a Native. And I find myself at a deficiency of grace. So I've spent an extraordinary amount of time of the last probably 6 to 7 months not in a very positive headspace, which is ironic given the talk I just gave. But having the opportunity to just own it, address it, and then at the same time try to play tourist in my own home space. But again, it is disappointing at best, disgusting at its middle ground. And I'll just say that in my own space, and hopefully some others will hop in there.
So I naturally have some thoughts about this, given that I work for a foundation whose sole mission is to improve health of an entire community by focusing on some of the least served and the disparate data outcomes that are clear by race here in St. Petersburg. There's a powerful clarity that I've gained regarding the people who are doing this work and still telling the stories. They exist in your communities. And I think we're looking at this from a national stage, from the education system. It's like, well, what does it look like to engage with the various historical learnings that are right here in your communities? You know, here in St. Pete, we have an African American history tour. We have griots, we have storytellers, we have markers, and we're constantly making sure that the work is being done. We're talking across systems, working with hospitals to determine, what is your procurement process like? What does it look like for you all to hire? How are your hiring practices potentially detrimental to communities of color? Partnering across racial identities. And so, yes, I've spoken many times about the Black experience, but the Latinx experience and the Black experience is very, very tied to one another. And all you can ask the question, well, who colonized you and where were you dropped off? That's really the difference between these two groups. And so what does it look like to think about solidarity? We have also a personal commitment that needs to be made, regardless of what we're being told we can or cannot do. What does your home look like, Liz? I so appreciate you for saying, bringing that forward. At home, are you educating your children, your grandchildren on the importance of history in its true sense? Or are you leaving that up to the powers that be? I think we have a personal commitment that we all need to be making, and then identifying those various resources and sharing them. There's a network, folks, and we need to be loud and clear about who's doing the work and how we advance it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcus. I know we're running out of time. Like I said to the audience, any questions that we have, we will send out the answer as a follow-up email. But I would like to close this panel with one last question, because we have talked about culture, about heritage, about people in our family or in our circle that has impacted our life. And one of the questions is, thinking about words and heritage, can you share any saying or refrain from a parent or grandparents that brings wisdom to your life now?
So this is something that's very unique to me as well. I have never been able to communicate with my grandparents ever. They do not speak English. I grew up speaking only English. My parents only taught me English. So I was never able to communicate with my grandparents. But the stories that they had, where I've had people translate their stories to me, and stuff that I could bring from their backgrounds to where I bring today. And I found this out recently too. This is very new to me. I found out the history of my grandfather and what he had to go through from Vietnam to come to America. He was his family, like my family's came from fishers, very, very humble living in Vietnam. And then when the war broke out, he was enlisted to be with the SVA, South Vietnamese Army, to help repel the communist push that was going through Vietnam. After the war was over, he got locked up in jail, got broken out of jail, and started smuggling people out of Vietnam, right? Smuggling people with his fishing boat that he used to fish, to smuggle people out of Vietnam. And just acts of courage, acts of kindness from this man who I've never been able to fully communicate with. So, and it's maybe something that just runs with the family, because my father, including me, myself, and my brothers, we all commit to these acts of kindness, to where it wasn't per se like taught like I need to do this, but leading as an example from what my grandfather did to what my father showed us growing up. Being kind, being able to listen to others, to put perspective, be in other people's shoes, to assisting our community as what it is now. And that's how I kind of pay it forward with what I have to do. And it may be not necessarily connected to the cultural of it, but just the events of the world and what we had to do to go around about it. So with the events of what we're going to now, with how the state of Florida is and everything else, what can one person do from the generations of what your past has done? And that's very simple, is being kind, helping others, giving out a hand when people need it. And I don't connect that to the culture. I just think that's just kind-hearted way of how we had to do things. Yeah.
Excellent. Any refrain, Virginia or Neriel? Any saying?
Yeah, I have one. I use this a lot, even sometimes in my signatures. I say pa'lante, right? Pa'lante, pa' atrás ni pa' coger impulso. So what? For my non-Spanish speaking friends, that is like onward, and we do not go backwards, not even to gain momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, this is what my mom's always telling me, because I'm like really shy to do big stuff. And she was also telling me this when I was about to be the panelist. She was like, sin miedo al éxito. So she was like, no fear to success, no fear to be bigger, no fear to do big stuff, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be successful. No fear to doing what you like, even if it's too big for you. So that's what she says to me almost every day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Woo, I want to cry. This has been an amazing, amazing, amazing panel. So unique. And I'm truly inspired by each one of you. And I know from the comments, this chat has not stopped. Everyone else is on fire, this is exactly what we're looking for. You share with everybody your individual experiences and showing us that despite our diverse background, we are all working for a common good. We all want a community to be empowered, a community that mobilization, and we want our citizens to thrive. Living under false pretenses could actually strip away our identity. Let's be proud of who we are. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Liz, for moderating this brave panel. Thank you so much. Now, moving on with our agenda, I'm going to invite Jill Ann Fowler from Year Up. One of the key values of the Intercultural Advocacy Institute is to support Latino students with their education, especially in obtaining post-secondary education. Each year, we award a scholarship to students who wouldn't otherwise qualify for any student aid. On behalf of the Diversity Conference Committee and the St. Petersburg College Foundation, this morning we are thrilled to present a scholarship in the amount of $500 to an outstanding community leader. Jill, please introduce the recipient of this year's scholarship.
Thank you so much, Yaya. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jillian Fowler, and I am an Enrollment Solutions Manager with Year Up, a national nonprofit organization that provides free career development programs for young adults. And Ty Wynn, I'm so proud of you. He is one of our alumni. So thank you to all the panelists. It is a hard act to follow. But I have the honor today of announcing the recipient of the 2023 Embracing Our Changing Community Scholarship. This scholarship is funded by our wonderful sponsors and is awarded to a Tampa Bay high school student who embodies the values of our annual diversity conference, a young person who works towards creating an inclusive community that welcomes and values its members. This year, we will be recognizing a young person who has focused a great deal of their energy on learning more about diversity, equity, and inclusion through their ongoing experiences with Anytown, a program of Community Tampa Bay. The scholarship recipient has been a participant in and a junior counselor with the Anytown program and has served with Community Tampa Bay's Advocacy Academy, which applies lessons learned from Anytown to create campaigns, promote dialogues, and influence public policies. This young person has also served their own community through coordinating volunteers for the Hispanic Services Council and by participating in the Latin Culture Club at school. Over the past few years, the scholarship recipient has developed strong leadership skills and a passion for social justice. After graduation, they are interested in attending FSU or FIU to study psychology or juvenile justice. I am so pleased and honored to announce that the 2023 Embracing Our Changing Community Scholarship recipient is Virginia Vasquez, one of our amazing panel speakers and a rising senior at Sickles High School. Virginia, thank you for your impactful and meaningful contributions to creating an inclusive community. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. God, that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And
Oh my God, you got me.
It was hard to keep it a secret.
This is great.
Going to call my counselor to start talking about scholarships. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. Congratulations, and thank you for the work that you do. And you are the voice of so many young people who sometimes feel they are not being heard. Keep using your words to advocate for more leadership opportunities for our younger generation. Thank you so much, Virginia.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you, thank you, Jerry.
Is there anything you want to say?
Thank you so much. I was really nervous about this whole scholarship thing because I'm about to start school, and my parents wanted me to keep going to school and go to college, and I was really nervous about this whole scholarship and applying for colleges stuff. And I'm gonna call my mom and tell her that she's gonna be so happy. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Virginia, you're amazing. And I think that everybody is going to want to fund you or accept you to school. So, but keep in touch with us because we have a lot of connections and we can provide you some guidance. And look at all the people that you've met through this conference. So
Amazing people, great people. I am so thankful that I am in this panel because I've met so many people and listening to their stories is just beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yaya.
And with this amazing and very emotional moment, we will take a 5-minute break, including a special video from the Diversity Ambassador sponsor, Raymond James, and a very relaxing musical video. Now let's see the video and 5 minutes break.
When I think of a career at Raymond James, I think impact,
community,
leadership,
opportunity,
technology.
What drew me to Raymond James was really the culture. What I really wanted was a place that resonated with my core values, that lined up with my principles and beliefs, and I was really looking for a place that had a great culture.
It doesn't matter what level you are at. Well, you're going to have the opportunity to come in and have an impact in this company. It is an opportunity that only happens once in a lifetime, in my opinion.
Our coworkers are encouraging us to speak up. They're putting us at the table and they want us to have those conversations and be a part of the work that's being done.
The interesting experience that I've had here at Raymond James is seeing how all the different walks of life and experiences come together to solve for the clients, building relationships.
Since I've been at Raymond James, I felt that I've had a great sense of independence to be able to really carve what my career is going to be.
Our culture, it really starts at the top. Paul Riley, our chairman and CEO, is committed to diversity, inclusion, hiring people who want to grow, add value to our organization, but also grow personally and professionally.
So we take a look at a person's background, and then from there we look at candidates who display strategic thinking, the ability to problem solve.
Just throw your name out there because you likely have skills that Raymond James is looking to benefit from because of the wide range of jobs and positions that we have here.
You have the ability to meet with so many different senior leaders that will support you in reaching your goals.
I love it when an associate sends me an email or calls me to say, would you be willing to have coffee with me? I'd love to learn more about the firm, love to know about your career journey, love to know how I can add more value to the company. I love those questions. All of my senior leader colleagues here at Raymond James feel the same way, that connecting with our associates is the way that helps us be a better company. Tom James has ingrained in this firm the importance of community involvement, community engagement. We all have opportunities to give back in a variety of ways.
Whether you're associated with United Way or participating in the Heart Walk, it is an opportunity to not only involve yourself, but involve your family too.
After my first year, I just dove right in and started volunteering and coordinating events for the HR department and making sure we had things on the books.
One of the ways to get involved is through our inclusion networks, to be able to help individuals understand the various cultures that exist here in Raymond James. There's an educational component to that.
As an associate, I sit on the Emerge leadership team, which is the firm's young professional network. Being a part of Emerge allowed me to meet so many different individuals and make this huge firm seem so much smaller than what it is.
I'm a veteran, so I try to attend a lot of the Valor Network events. At the Valor Network, we had the entire executive team there, and they took time out of their busy day to come hear a combat veteran speak about veterans issues and hiring. It really tells me that they take veterans seriously here, and they appreciate the veterans and the work that we're doing.
There is ample opportunity here at Raymond James to grow your career. We know candidates have choices. Here at Raymond James, with our unique culture, the ability to make an impact, our inclusive environment, Raymond James is an ideal choice. to develop a career.
Thank you for coming back. Sometimes words, like we keep saying this morning, have a lot of power. And we know the captions were in German, but the music also bridged communities. So thank you, thank you. I'm not going to read the next speaker bio. She has an extensive bio, and you can find it in. I want Marielle to actually speak and close this amazing conference with the strong message she has for us. Marielle, I want you to heal our audience with the power of your words.
So hello, everybody. That was a lot. I'm going to do my best in this today. I'll start by sharing my name. I always like to say that, how do I say my name? How do I pronounce my name? Not everyone knows. So I'm Marielle Martinez, Marielle Martinez. My pronouns are she, ella. I'm program director at the Nonprofit Leadership Center. I share a little bit about the center with you all in case you don't know, because I saw some questions in the chat about, well, who, you know, where does everybody work and what do you do? So this is a Nonprofit Leadership Center. What I like to say about us is that we are here to serve other nonprofit organizations. I'm not going to read all of that stuff to you that's on the screen, but just broadly speaking, we provide opportunities for training and development for other nonprofit professionals across the Tampa Bay area. And there are many ways in which we do this. If you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me. I know that Liz shared everyone's LinkedIn info earlier, so I'll let you do that if you are interested. So I'll stop there with that. And I'm going to start in with something, you know, it's funny, when Liz was doing her part, I was like, oh, yes, parents do things where we talk about our kids, it can't be helped, right? So I want to point out that I know that Jessica Esteves with Mi Gente, Mi Pueblo is in the space. I had the good fortune of being a part of something that they do called Reclamando Raíces, reclaiming our roots. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience for me. And a lot of different things happened in that space for me. And one of them was the ability to connect to pieces of myself that I don't always have access to, or that I don't always have front of mind. And with that, there was this little sticker that she shared with folks. And I'm not going to tell you what it said, but Jessica, you know, wink, wink. And then I'll tell you later. There was a sticker and it made me think of healing in relation to what we're doing here today. I have two kids, one is 20 and one is 17. But when they were little, if they fell and they got hurt, one of two things would happen. Either they would come to me and say, Mommy, do the sana, or I would say, do you want me to do the sana? What is that? Well, for those of you who speak Spanish, maybe this is relatable to you. It's sana, sana, colita de rana. Si no te sanas hoy, te sanas mañana. And you say this spell over a child, you know, wherever they're hurt, their little arm, their little knee, whatever's happening. And literally what it translates to is heal, heal, frog's tail. If you don't heal today, you'll heal tomorrow. Sounds a little bit bizarre, I'm sure, but it is powerful, right? It is powerful. I promise you that my kids, if I did the sana, they would just calm down. And even though their knee might still be bleeding, even though it still might hurt, they believed that they were going to be okay with those ones. And that sticker that I was referencing before had the little frog with, I think, like a little Band-Aid on it with the word sana on it. And so more specifically, and also just today, listening to Virginia and Ty, who were sort of our younger folks with us today and on the panel, thinking about the language, right? The language that younger folks have access to today that I certainly didn't have growing up, to be able to have conversations and use inclusive language related to those conversations, connected to really important pieces of experience that impact people's lives on a regular and profound basis. So we're able to have more nuanced and complex language around difficult topics, such as systemic racism, mental health, the spectrum of gender, neurodiversity, ability status, et cetera, et cetera. And I can tell you personally, for me, I alluded to this earlier and I didn't want to kind of give it away then, but part of my journey involving language is related to coming to the understanding that I am part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I didn't figure that out till I was 40. And a lot of that had to do with access to language. So I also talked about coming from a community where I felt really culturally affirmed, but also restricted in terms of who I could be and what my roles could be in life. And so throughout my journey, those two things have come together to bring me to a point of choice. When I came to understand, because of the power of language, that folks weren't only straight or gay, which were the only terms that I had access to growing up, and I understood that I am a pansexual person, and that could free me, that I could now understand, oh, that's why I had those feelings. That's why I had these attractions, et cetera, that I could give it a word, a name, that was a point in time in my life as an adult. Like I said, I was 40 when it all finally clicked, where I was able to come into who I really am. And that has allowed me to do the work that I do and to try my best to show up authentically and hopefully create spaces where other people feel like they can also do that, right? They can show up 100% as who they are. Other ideas and examples that I think about related to language and how it can make us feel connected and how it can create healing for us. An example that I think about is if I am in a space where I'm not expecting to hear Spanish, but I do, I get very excited. I'm like, I hear a thing and I'm like, I gravitate toward it. I want to speak to those people. I get like very, very happy because my association with Spanish is a really positive one. I acknowledge that that's not true for everyone, but it is for me. Or I think about, I've seen examples of folks who are in a space and they are part of the deaf community and they encounter someone who unexpectedly, can knows ASL, American Sign Language, is able to sign with them, right? And the kind of the freedom and the healing that can come from that kind of experience. I think about using the correct pronouns for folks and the ways in which that can also create a sense of safety, I should say, and comfort. So I want to invite you all in the chat to think about this and then to share in the chat if you have any examples of ways in which sort of language has, and I'm putting a prompt in the chat, right? Ways in which or experiences that you've seen or you've witnessed other folks having in which inclusive language made you or them feel seen, understood, safe. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I don't know if that means that we're not getting anything in the chat or I'm not seeing it. Now I'm starting to see it. Being able to speak people's languages, visiting other countries. Feeling safe and a sense of relief when you hear your language that you're able to use. Hugs. So sure, we can also talk about nonverbals and the ways in which they can make us feel good. Oh, inclusive language for God or our belief systems, our traditional or non-traditional views of spirituality. Knowing that you're liked, that you're accepted. Smiles, the word welcome, bienvenida. When you see symbols outside of spaces that let you know that it's an inclusive space. Food, music. Words of affirmation. More welcoming, being listened to and listening. More of that loving body language. When I hear someone share their pronouns, it makes me feel safe to express my identity 100%. I know connecting with someone from their hometown and having those kind of relations. Songs, sure, we were just listening to some music maybe. And earlier, even in the beginning, y'all, when that music was playing at the very beginning of the session, I thought, oh, we have these conversations around what's my love language? And I was like, percussion is my love language. I was like really into that drumming, my friends. Salsa, that's right, what's up? All right, my friends, I'll stop there. And I invite you to kind of keep thinking about that. Experiences or things related to words, related to language, and again, could be verbal or nonverbal expressions that really make us feel connected, that make us feel like we're really fully seen and embraced, that create a sense of safety for us. And the power that all of that can have in our lives. I want to acknowledge too that while there is liberation and healing with access to inclusive language, there can also be some pushback, right? It's work. We're being asked to, as Marcus had said earlier, to learn and to unlearn some things. And that takes work, that takes effort. It's like, it feels a lot easier to just kind of sit in where you are and what you know and not have to think so hard sometimes. But we are asked and we are challenged to do that if we want to create genuine inclusion for ourselves and for other folks. So with that, I do want to take some time to share with you some concrete tools related to inclusive language. And so let's move to that. I found this wonderful resource from the Center for Equity, Gender and Leadership at UC Berkeley's School of Business. And it talks about broadly how inclusive language can be approached, what we can do to learn it, to use it, to access it, and to sort of stay nimble with it. And so I'll share some of the principles that they use to develop this particular framework. So they talked about inclusive language conveys respect to all people. It communicates a message effectively through precise language. So it's really important that we pinpoint language that really gets what we're trying to communicate. It recognizes that wish to create intention and we fit common with folks. That's a good starting point. Also have to be about diversity, have to be able to talk about the meaningful differences that we have with other folks, right? So that we can communicate and create inclusion across those lines of difference. And it involves continual improvement, right? Things change, we change with them, we continue to unlearn and learn new things to be able to, again, create that sense of genuine connection with other folks. Some key questions.
I think Marielle is having some technical issues.
I'm back. Sorry,
okay.
How much did we lose?
You're still buffering a little bit. Can you? Let's see. Let's do this again.
Okay, so can you tell me where we are so I can? Dada, can you hear me?
Yes, right there in the inclusive language framework.
Yes.
And some questions. You wanted people to have some questions if they have now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So let's go back. What I was saying earlier is that even I do this myself or I try to create a practice where I am pretty much always interrogating the words that I use, the phrases that I use, and ask myself some fundamental questions because I want to do my best to avoid causing harm inadvertently. And so some of these questions align with what these folks here at the center would recommend. I'm going to share those with you as well. So does this term center dominant groups as the default and/or perpetuate harmful stereotypes? I want to lean into this for a second with you all, because what is this dominant group thing? Well, depending on the context, who is in a position of power and privilege, right? And oftentimes that very same thing is also what is considered normal. So it's important to question who defines what normal is and what do they gain from that, right? We want to be able to expand our idea of normal. Marcus said something that I found really powerful earlier, talking about, it's kind of like Black is beautiful, right? But that isn't necessarily the narrative that is out in the world, right? It is a beautiful thing to be who you are. And so, but who you are and how you show up in the world may not fall into the societal's view of normal. So we want to expand that. We want to expand what that is. And the language that we use certainly creates an impact around that for us. Does the term have a harmful history or association? I can tell you, I've been doing a lot of learning connected to ableist language. So a lot of us, myself included, use terms like, oh, I was blindsided, or, oh, I'm really OCD, or, all of these things. And we certainly don't mean any harm when we say these things. And yet, when you really pull back and you think about this, you are referencing something that is a very real experience and reality for some folks. And so there is some harm that you could be causing when you use this kind of language. There are also expressions that we don't realize are related to really painful historical facts. So for example, this expression of like somebody got grandfathered into something, well, that's related to active removal, or yes, creating barriers and lack of access for Black folks in certain environments, right? And it's a history's long way of saying, okay, well, let's see how we can kind of work around the law if we only grandfather folks into associations, groups, whatever that may be, then by default, that leaves out Black and brown folks. So even though that's not our intention when we use an expression like that, if we're understanding the history and the background of it, then we can kind of sidestep that and create new language or lean into language that actually then creates an embracing of all folks. Does the term contribute to communication in which everyone feels respected and seen? This is a tall order, but we can at least start to ask ourselves a question. We're trying to create spaces and connections with folks where no one is being left out. Does it intend the meaning to all precisely and effectively? Again, we talked about precise language. And is it the best that I can use to communicate my message? Again, some of these questions they're not necessarily easy to answer, but I think even the practice of asking them can get us closer to creating more inclusive experiences for folks. I also want to share with you in the chat a glossary of terms that the same resource provides. I think it's super, I mean, I definitely have used it myself. And so I encourage you to check it out as well. Let me make sure I'm getting everyone. This glossary is a great tool when you're asking yourselves these questions that I, right? Because some of the answers are already there for you. It's like, can I use this? Like, this might not be the best way for me to say this. Again, when I'm thinking about creating inclusion, when I'm thinking about conversation and not alienate or cause harm. So with that, I a little more into how we today, and some of it has connected, certainly for me, to painful is an ouch, right? I can tell you I've had to apologize to my own children and try to create healing and restoration with my own children because of language I've used that has not been what I intended, but that has caused harm. So I want to then be able to flip it and lean into what are some things that we do to create healing? What are some ways in which the words that we use can and do allow for forgiveness of ourselves and others, for moving forward, for doing better with again, and it could be words, it could be nonverbal. So I'm curious sort of in the chat, if anyone has anything to share connected to healing language, healing words. How do we get to that place where we can now turn something that is potentially painful and allow it to bloom and blossom into something beautiful?
Miriam, can you hear me?
Yeah, Jaja, I can hear you. It sounds like folks aren't able to hear me really well.
I think we're having some of us can hear you well, but some people have a problem with the audio.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But for those of us who could hear me, I'm gonna lean into what I'm seeing in the chat. Pausing before you speak, apologizing when you speak and you should have paused. I can relate to that so much. Sometimes, you know, I've heard someone else say, and I think they were quoting someone else say, in a moment, ask yourself, does this have to be said? Does it have to be said now? And does it have to be said by me? That can really be helpful in allowing us to navigate in allowing us to try to hold ourselves together and make room for silence as opposed to harmful words. So I am hearing empathy, healing words, something like that must be hard. What Virginia shared earlier is so powerful, right? That we might say, I understand, but maybe really what we want to say is, I don't understand. I have no idea what it feels like to have that experience. I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. And if you want me to, I will listen. People say I'm sorry without meaning it, right? We can sometimes tell, not always, sometimes we're mistaken, right? But if we have the sense that someone using the words I'm sorry, but not actually meaning them, that can have quite a negative impact on us. So part of my responsibility, though, is to do my best that when I am saying I'm sorry, it is coming across authentically, that I really am meaning. Yes, of course. Are you saying something just because you want to be heard? Or are you profoundly listening and responding? I understand what you're saying as opposed to I know what it feels like to be you. Another one that I've heard folks put, and I push against that, is this idea of, oh, everything is going to be okay. Well, maybe it's not. And so how do we allow a person to have their experience and not necessarily shut it down by saying these words that we don't have a view into how things are going to play out for that person? Can we sit with them and help them to hold the question that's hanging over, right? How is this going to go? Is everything going to be okay? The vulnerability in some of what we do, apologizing genuinely. Authenticity, folks are really needing that. Yep. I don't know what it's like, but I am listening. Everyone, thank you so much for those thoughts. And I want to, hold on, I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. I want to add another question to this as we start to close out my part of it, right? When we think about our communities, they change. You know, I remember I mentioned to you all, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and when I was growing up there, it was a largely Caribbean community. So lots of folks from any of the Caribbean islands. And that community changed. And so with the change in our communities, so do the ways in which we speak, so does the language, so do the phrases that we hear. There's a lot that comes with that. And so it can sometimes feel like our conversations can be frustrating because it feels like a moving target. Oh, now you're not supposed to say this. Oh, now you have to use this other thing. And that's true. The specifics do change, and we are called to continuously, again, unlearn and learn. However, the essence does not change. The why of why we engage, why we care, why we want to keep learning, because we want to acknowledge everyone's humanity, because we want to create safety and comfort for everyone. The why doesn't change. And that can be, even when we're tired of unlearning and learning, that can be our focal point and our motivation to keep going. So I invite you to ponder this last question. How will you use inclusive language to create healing for yourself and for others?
Thank you so much, Marielle, for your uplifting and powerful remarks. A question that I have, and there's so much going on in the world. How can you continue being the healer to keep healing the little frogs, ser los sanadores de esas ranitas?
Am I healing? That's the first question. What do I need to heal? What do I need to be okay? there's a lot of wisdom in the chat. And so many folks have already said this in some way, shape, or form, but if I am not okay, then I cannot serve. And I want to serve. And so it's a bit of it can seem like a contradiction, but like so many folks have already said, if I do not prioritize myself, then I cannot give the way that I want. So that's the question. Am I healing?
That is great. Anything else you would like to share, Marielle, as we continue our journey?
If there are any questions and we have time for them, I'm happy to welcome those questions. Other than that, I'm just humbled to be a part of this at all. Just wonderful humans. I'm seeing so much wisdom in the chat. I'm seeing so much affirmation and love in the chat, and that's a beautiful thing, especially during these times where so many of us feel unseen, unappreciated, pushed out.
There's a question. How do you know that when you're ready to serve? When do you know that you're actually healed?
Well, I don't know that there's like an endpoint where you are healed fully. So I think that's why I asked, am I healing, right? It's a continuous practice. Do we listen to ourselves enough? Do we make enough space, quiet, to be honest with ourselves about where we are and what we have the capacity? And this is a practice. It's not a magical thing that just happens, but if we get into the practice of really checking in with ourselves and being truthful, like, okay, I think today I need to just not, right? No Facebook today, no this today. I'm not calling my mom a lover, but that's going to trigger me. Whatever that is for you, to give yourself permission to do that and re-energize. And you'll know, again, if you build that practice, you're just going to know right in your center that you're able to give.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marielle. Let's just keep saying the sana sana colita de rana. Marielle, can you announce, you mentioned that there's a special prize for a person, I don't know, the person that has been the most engaged, because the chat has been actually on fire. The one prize that the Nonprofit Leadership Center is providing to this most engaged attendee, and what exactly the prize is.
Sure. So like I said earlier, at the Nonprofit Leadership Center, we provide training and development opportunities for nonprofit professionals. We have a training room in our West Shore offices where on a regular basis, we hold 4-hour trainings, 8:30 to 12:30 p.m. Around all kinds of topics. So if it's anything that impacts the work that you do as a nonprofit professional, chances are that we've got a training related to that: grant making, fundraising, things related to HR. I mean, you name it, we do it. We do diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings. I'm the person who does those more often than not. Conflict development, all kinds of stuff. And so what we'd like to do is offer one person one of those 4-hour classes. If you win, or when you win, you'll reach out to me and I will help you identify the class that you think would be most beneficial to you. We'll get you registered and you'll join us in our training room.
Oh, guess what? I have the person. It was a really hard decision because, like I said, the chat has been amazing, has been on fire, but I have the person that is the winner, and I happen to know this person. So Julian Perez, you are the winner of this great prize from NLC. So we will make sure that to connect Julian Perez with you, Marielle.
Chévere.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. All right, so moving on with our agenda. I mentioned at the beginning of the conference that every person attending this webinar will get a special prize. And so now it's my privilege to bring to the stage Joanna Corte. She's the project coordinator addressing crisis today in Tampa Bay Workforce Institute from St. Petersburg College. and she will announce the great prize everybody will receive today. Welcome, Joanna. You're muted, Joanna.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. You know, words have a tremendous impact on mental health. You don't have to be an expert to make a positive impact on someone who is struggling, and mental health first aid will help you do just that. So just as CPR helps even those without clinical training assist an individual having a heart attack, mental health first aid prepares participants to interact with a person experiencing a mental health crisis. Through this training, you will learn to listen non-judgmentally. So again, today we spoke about how to hold space for someone, refer to emergency and non-emergency services, provide reassurance and information, advocate on the importance of connecting with professional help, and provide self-help and other support strategies. So today we touched on the importance of self-care. Training opportunities are available next month and will be ongoing on a first come, first served basis. For more information about this certification, please open the camera on your phone and hover over the QR code on your screen, or click on the link just dropped in the chat to provide your contact information. Thanks to funding through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration and Community Foundation Tampa Bay, this training is provided for free to public service professionals and client-facing volunteers that we have here today. And that includes those within schools, emergency response, healthcare, veterans organizations, faith-based organizations, and nonprofits. In conclusion, please take advantage of this great opportunity to expand your skills through this certification. Join me in becoming more impactful service providers, team members, leaders, friends, and family members. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joanna. And I told you that we will have a great surprise and a great prize for everybody. The information is there. The team is also included in the chat, and we will make sure that we follow up with an email with this information, but please take advantage of this great opportunity. This is another way to heal the community, to heal ourselves in order for us to heal others. On behalf of the Diversity Committee, the Intercultural Advocacy Institute, and our sponsor organizations, we truly thank you for your time, attention, and engagement this morning. It has been an honor to share this experience with you. You will receive a follow-up survey in your emails. We would love your feedback so that we can better plan future conferences, and hopefully next time will be in person. We will also share the link of the recording of this session that will be soon available at the Hispanic Outreach Center's website. I always like to finish with a challenge for all of us. When you go home today or back to your office, I want us to remember the following quote from Yehuda Berg. Words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. Our community health, healing, and success is in our collective responsibility. Let us use our word very carefully. I wish each one of you a beautiful and safe Friday and weekend. Thank you, and I'll see you next year. Muchas gracias a todos.